State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
the duties of the office of the Mount Baker School District 507,
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
Director District 5 in and for the County of Whatcom,
Director District 5 in and for the County of Whatcom,
State of Washington, according to the law and to the best of my ability.
State of Washington, according to the law and the best of my ability.
All right, congratulations. All right. I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I, Edward Fox, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
Director District 2 in and for the County of Whatcom,
Director District 2 in and for the County of Washington,
State of Washington, according to law and the best of my ability.
State of Washington, according to the law and to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay. I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I, Danielle Gray, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
Director District 1 in and for the County of Whatcom,
Director District 1 in and for the County of Whatcom,
State of Washington, according to law and to the best of my ability.
State of Washington, according to the law and to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. All right. I state your name, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States
I, Jason Bloodgood, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution and laws of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
and I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
the duties of the office of Mount Baker School District 507,
Director District 3 in and for the County of Whatcom,
Director District 3 in and for the County of Whatcom,
State of Washington, according to law and to the best of my ability.
State of Washington, according to the law and the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Well, welcome, Jason, and thank you to the rest of you for being willing to serve again here. It's an honor and a privilege and a duty all bound up in one. I think we've done a good job of also making it enjoyable too. So it helps us keep going, I think. So thank you, everyone. The first order of business is after the oath of office is annual procedures, starting out with a call for nominations for president of the board.
I move to nominate Russ Viper-Hoyt as president of the board.
Moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Passes. Next is call for nominations for the office of vice president of the board.
I'd like to nominate Brenna.
I can't nominate myself.
Everybody talk at the same time.
I second the nomination.
All those in favor of Brenna for vice president of the board?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Brenna. Next is designation of legislative representative.
Could you tell us a little bit about what the responsibilities are there?
So the responsibilities are understanding and the legislative issues, so working with other school directors throughout the state, primarily through Washington State School Directors Association. And then being able to communicate the district's interest in concert with WASDA to our local legislators, as well as working with WASDA as an organization so that we work with the school directors throughout the state to basically provide ideally one voice of the major issues that we cover. So it's a combination of understanding the issues and communicating. And then time-wise, there's, in addition, just, communications, whether phone calls or emails and that kind of thing. There's a legislative assembly once a year, and where WASDA members, leg reps vote on legislative priorities at positions, and then make priorities for the year for WASDA, and then a legislative conference, which is also once a year, a couple of days in Olympia,
Okay.
as well as occasional other meetings, mostly on Zoom. That's
Who currently has that?
I've been doing it.
You've been doing it.
And I am willing to do it again. What I would like to do, if I did it again, is try to help the others learn kind of the ropes, because it does take a bit of background in multiple issues to be able to understand and then articulate those issues.
Okay. I mean, I'd like to look for opportunities to get Danielle more involved, and kind of sounds like something that might be up her alley, but I don't want to put your name forward based on a time commitment. So I don't know, can we have a discussion about that, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, what about I would say maybe if Russ was willing to do it again this year, but then have someone that would work with him to kind of learn the ropes. I mean, he's obviously really important in that group. He has a lot of contacts, and I think somebody, working with somebody, because you can have more than one, right?
Well, there's one official ledge rep. The way we, as far as voting at WASDA on positions, the ledge rep does not have to do the voting. You only get one vote, but you can pass that between the members present. And so in fact, sometimes districts will have one person represent for part of the meeting or certain issues, and then it does in some districts. One of the members may be much more knowledgeable about a certain issue, and so they get the credentials for the discussion of that issue. Because that's the other thing we do at the assembly, is try to convince the other directors throughout the state of the value of a certain position or wording. And so being able to articulate that in 5 words or less is important.
It's 10. You get 10.
Oh, 10, yeah. 10 is simple.
Yeah. So I see 2 ways of that happening. One is that you stay in that and then have someone else working next to you, or the other would be you put the person in that position now, and then you're still working with that person on the side to help them.
Brenda, what about you?
I mean, either way, I think you would be great too. So
I feel like I'd like a little more time
Yeah,
To
I'm
get-
not ready to commit.
to get the ropes of this role,
Yeah.
but it's definitely something that I'm interested in the
Okay.
future.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure, and I appreciate your comments.
Sure.
But Brenna, you've been on the board a little longer, so you have a better understanding of how what we do here
Yeah.
plays out.
I'm not 100% ready to commit to that much extra time. And there's also some other things that I've been like for the brewery, like there is some legislative stuff that I'm interested in as well, and I don't really want to cross those paths
Yeah,
together.
that's a very important
So,
point, because you
yeah.
can't,
Yeah,
as ledge rep, you can't mix your own.
right. Yeah, there's some things that I would like to advocate as far as for the
We can't start selling beer
For the
at athletic
brewery.
events.
Yeah, it does, it does.
Could be a good way to balance the budget.
put it to the vote. But, so I mean, I would be comfortable, I would like to nominate Russ for ledge rep for now, and then hopefully find you a person who could, learn the ropes from you. So that's my,
Yeah, I'm fine with that as long as you do have someone working next to
Yeah,
you.
and that's really, that's what I want to do, because it takes a while. I mean, there's a multiplicity of issues, and it takes a while to master them. And you only become effective after, so you got to do two things to become effective: understand the issues and form relationships with both the legislators and WASDA members throughout the state, because it's only through those relationships that people even listen to you. And that's, I've been effective in WASDA because for the most part, if I support an issue, people will say, okay, that makes sense. And that takes some time to develop those relationships.
Okay, well, sounds like we have at least two people that are somewhat interested in it, so maybe that discussion can continue
Yeah,
and move forward.
but I would really like to, be able to provide for that transition.
I think it's important.
There's a nomination, isn't there?
is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passes, thank you. And then the last is designation of Washington Interstate Athletics Association representative.
What
And
does
this
that
is-
entail?
Huh?
What does that entail?
So I believe most of the meetings for that would be Zoom or a communication by email too. And I don't know the frequency of the meetings. I've never served in that position. Jim Freeman was always our representative because he was a longtime coach here at Mount Baker and really understood the issues and had a lot of interest in it. But it's something I think you would be, if you're interested in, would be a good.
Yeah,
Sure.
without fully understanding the time commitment involved with it, but I guess it's not too much because I don't know who's been doing that.
Well, see, that's the thing. But it actually has been vacant for a few years. It's probably been vacant since Jim retired from the board, because I can't think of
Okay.
anyone else who would take it.
Yeah.
Did Brian do it after Jim?
I don't think so.
That would be the only other person who.
Yeah, I don't think so. So I think it's, do you remember, Tammy? I can't think of it. I mean, it's something we've wanted to fill, but it's,
Yeah. I mean, I'm obviously I got all my kids in sports and stuff, so I'm interested in that, have a vested interest in it, so. If I can do that, I'm happy to do it, and happy to revisit if anybody else is interested.
Yeah.
At
Well,
a later date.
and you are exposed to kind of the youth, school sport athletics. And
Yeah.
so that does give you at least a chance to
Right.
follow the issues.
Yep.
Up close.
Okay.
Give you another reason to miss work and come to your kids' games.
That's right, yeah.
So, anyway, do I hear a nomination?
Nominate Ed for WIAA representative.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your willingness and, yeah, let me know how much the time commitment is.
Yeah.
That was a question I wasn't prepared
I
for.
checked with Coach Buffer on that as well.
I think you can make the commitment what you want to make it.
Okay.
You don't, I
Yeah.
don't.
Well, and that's a very important point because you're representing Mount Baker School District at the WIAA.
Right.
So understanding the issues with Ron Lepper would be very valuable because then you would be much better able to represent what we,
Yep, okay,
because he will be able to fill you in on the background
right,
and get you up to speed with the issues.
okay, cool.
Okay, well, I think next we're going to, we have to sign the oath of office and then we'll recess to executive session. Is that?
Well, one thing that was different on here, we had talked about doing the executive session until 5:45 and then
Yeah.
taking that break and coming
Yeah,
back to open meeting at 6.
that's so we do need to correct that, 5:45, so that should.
Because these are gonna finish at 5:45, recess for 15.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then begin the, reconvene the regular board meeting at 6 p.m. And as written here, the purpose and the time and we may or may not take action when we return to open session.
And we can still use your office.
Yeah.
Fine, your next 4 years away, guys.
Yeah. I don't like coaching, but it's never ending season.
That's why I noticed, because I'm left-handed.
Look
Yeah.
at that. There's an equal distribution in the table here.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Statistically, it's usually 1 out of
What is it?
10. Left-handedness.
Oh,
lefty.
Yeah, so Jason and Danielle and I are all left-handed.
wow.
Please.
I have to head to another meeting, but my office is open.
Okay.
So I'll sign those later.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you guys. See you in a bit.
14th.
Thank you.
December.
Went really well.
And then Tammy, you're the notary?
Yep,
I am.
Which is funny, because I floated that in the meeting and nobody took me up on it, which is fine, I don't need it to be my favorite. There's been a complete turn in some of the members there. So we discussed that and looking at affordable again. I'm gonna call my number back. We're trying to find a place or time to get out there and look at it. And get some more solid information. What that we've heard was look at it with they didn't require.
Wear my badge. Yeah, it helps if you remember your name.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It seemed like a step forward back at the same time. But Harley's been on it. Already got a foundation. Giving them an updated scope of work here, some options we'll discuss, send out an email to the group about those things. When we get together our next check-in, we're gonna go.
Got my
through the
election
models
certificate in
models,
the mail.
and then
Yeah,
get
you
back
got
to
that.
foundation.
You can frame it, put it in the wall.
Yeah, I know, right?
The cost of the middle clinic, I think we can that right, and there's all the benefits having these about.
But when I talked with Danielle's kids, I said, you must be proud of your mom, and she let me know that they didn't really know what she was
My
doing.
kids don't know that. They're only 8, and I don't want like the playground conversation,
Right.
things for their teacher, like, So I just
But
told
then
them
you
I'm
can
coming to
have
help out at the
the medical.
school.
Well, you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not lying, but I'm not like.
We're thinking.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll just.
trying to do like clarity, and I asked for it to do all these things, and like we got 100% clarity score on every time I rewrote it, so I was like, all right, I'll take it, I'll take it. Like, that's the one thing we're going for here.
Yeah, because one is for
Yeah.
Filipino, one's for.
This is
Yeah.
Yep.
mentioned in the legislative. I'll just read.
I don't know
No, I
exactly.
put it there.
Okay.
I'm told,
Address
should I
that.
not have put it
Okay,
there?
so hold on, so the top section is what we wanted to use, but we, in order to meet the limits and their rules, the bottom is what actually had to go in there.
Got it, okay.
So if I had it my way, the top would have gone in, it would have been bullet points and spread out and all the words. But bullet points aren't allowed, and it's limited to 200 words, and that includes your writers.
Oh,
So if you like look on top, it says like our full first and last name, and if you look down below, it's our first initial and a last name, because that's one word instead of two.
Yeah.
Like that's the level I had to get to package it in there.
I feel like I've seen bullets in the voter pamphlet.
I got told no.
Rude.
No. No.
Well, at least we get to see it like this.
You
So
can't,
let's
and
make
it can be used other places like
Right.
that. That was more why I'm willing to share it, because
Oh, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing this and for the work put into it.
Yeah.
And ChatGPT is so fun.
You know, it wasn't like, we didn't just say like, write it.
No.
We said, put
No.
these things together.
It's a collaborative process when you're working with it, right? You're telling it the input and then you're like, no, not quite like that. Yeah, yeah, it's fun.
And the semicolon, there's a reason that Leilani Pitts at one point when I was in college, she was, it was before computers. So I was having her type my papers, and she told me that she was gonna have to drop me from her stable of people she was working for unless I paid her the higher editing rate, because she could not stand to just type it as it was.
I think most people don't care about that level of detail.
I can't, I'm just an idiot.
No. No.
Because I'm gonna talk, we had some more teachers certified as national board teachers, and I'm just gonna kind of like put it in order, I'll talk during public comment, but this is just a little packet about national board certification, and then I don't have to talk about this, I can just talk about what the Bay Group does to support this process.
A copy for my board docs.
Yes, I've got one for you to do, and I should sign in so I can talk too. I should have done it as good of the order, but I wasn't.
I actually have
Welcome, it's 6 p.m. We resume the meeting. We already have completed the opening items, so in resuming the meeting, we'll start with the good of the order. Nick?
Alrighty. On my screen. All right, we got a few things to talk about for good of the order. The first one being the Nooksec Storyteller. There's a donation from about Baker family that allowed renowned Nooksec storytellers Tammy Cooper Woodrich and her family to share Native American stories at Acme Kendall and Harmony. And it was a great opportunity for students to hear the rich local tales from an elder with Nooksack tribe. So thanks to that donation, and thanks also to Tammy and her family for that. Roots of Empathy is a program that's underway at the 3rd grade classrooms in all 3 of our elementary schools, wherein a tiny teacher, which is a baby, comes in with their parents to spend some time in the 3rd grade classrooms. And it's research-based. Obviously, I'm not reading this word for word, so feel free to go back and review it. Research-based way to build empathy with our students. And it's been a success so far. And I got to hear about it from the Roots of Empathy coordinator the other day, and she's very happy to be partnering with Mount Baker. So kudos to our school counselors and Bridget Rossman and our teachers who have been great partners with Roots of Empathy. The local firefighters union helped with Operation Warm at Kendall, and every kiddo at Kendall got a new coat. So there's a picture of some of the students enjoying their new coats, thanks to that firefighters group. And some good news from our FFA Ag Mech team. First place out of a record number of 12 teams and 112 individuals. A couple students there, you can see how they placed. And in the words of Mr. Reitmeyer, it's a young and inexperienced team that has worked hard practicing for the last 2 months. So congratulations to all 15 members. And that's what I have for good of the order.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So next up is the consent agenda, and since you're first time here, the consent agenda are those normal business items that are regular business items that the board must approve, payroll, those kind of things that we approve without discussion. If any board member wishes to remove any of those items from the consent agenda and put them on the action item, they can do so. Just have to ask for that and they will be moved. So otherwise, if they're on the consent agenda, that means that they're non-controversial and we approve the whole thing. So I will start by asking for a motion on the consent agenda, to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next is up is public comments. And Tammy, do you have any unsigned? Okay. So first up, Bree Zender.
Yep.
Okay, I'm Bree Zender. I spoke before. I'm a mom and I also teach at Acme as a paraeducator. So couple things I wanted to discuss. The first thing is I had and also continue to have some frustration about the new financial work group. I feel like it was established quickly, which I'm super proud of, but I feel like it was established kind of under the radar a bit. I expressed my concerns to your president. I didn't feel like I got accurate answers back. A reason of my frustration is that there's not really an elementary teacher representation, not just Acme, but no elementary teacher representation. There's a couple teachers from the high school. I just feel like the elementary school isn't being represented in that, and I feel like that could have been something you guys could have looked at. I understand it's a fact-finding group, and no decisions are being made, but I worry that your fact-finding is going to leave the elementary schools in the dust by not having representation. I think it would have been nice to see some community representation too, only because I went to every meeting and at Acme and Kendall and Harmony, and there were a lot of community members that were interested in that group as well. And I think we could have found a way to include an elementary teacher and also the community members. So that's disappointing when we've been talking about transparency, and I feel like that was just kind of under the rug a bit. The second concern I have, I know that we talked about not closing Acme, and I think that's great that that was said, but I'm still feeling a little lackluster and feeling that it was said kind of hush. And I still feel like, because again, we don't have elementary representation, that some of those needs are going to be pushed under the rug. So that's all I wanted to say today. Those are things that just aren't making me feel good. And so I think it's important you all know that. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Jen Espinola.
Okay, I have a few things. I have 4 of them. Number 1, I want you guys to understand the current state of our district. Mary sent out an email to all parents and staff asking for volunteers to write your for and against statement. Do you know how many people replied to that email? 1 by the deadline. Do you know who that one person was? Me. Okay? That is the state of involvement that you're getting. We need to work together for our financial affairs. I'm grateful that we have the community members around, because I did happen to call upon the people that I have a forged volunteer working relationship with, and people that just happened to be able to be in the room at the same time we showed up. Second, for your records, you guys should note that both the EP&O and the capital levy for statements have been submitted and approved by the auditor's office. I've done this, and I've done my volunteer piece. Now it's on you. You guys need to make sure we deliver an honest, holistic, faith-building message about our current financial situation that is a clear plan for the future. Number 3, as a parent, I received the letter and the email on December 7th talking about the fact finding. That's great. You talked about having your first meeting on December 4th. I'm a little curious as to why y'all needed that much time to get there, and how much of a message we're going to get tonight. The community meetings were on the 11th, November 13th, 14th, and 15th. So tonight, a month later, we're going to get an initial response. Kind of seems like a little bit of time there. The ballots will be mailed on January 24th. And your note says we're going to have more, not final, information delivered on January 11th. That doesn't seem like an accurate timeline to me. Our election is in February 13th. We need a clear, final, delivered message to our voters. All of the budget information that was shared at all of those meetings for next year and the follow-on was assuming your EP&O levy passes. I am not sure with the current message we have out there with our community that that is a viable thing. Number 4. I'm here to work with you to try to help correct that image. I'm willing, I'm volunteering, I put in my time. My question is, are you up for the task, and do you understand the haste at which is necessary to do this, to pass these new 2 levies? It is not our community's fault, but they're going to pay the price. It is not our staff's fault, but they will pay the price. It is definitely not our children's fault, but they're going to pay the ultimate price.
Thank you. Kayla and Jewel.
Okay. Hello, my name is Kaylin Jewell, and I'm a junior here at Baker. I take great pride in the fact that I'm a 4th generation Mount Baker student. I stand before you to shed light on the fact that Mount Baker students have been failed by district leaders in this board. I'm a 2-season athlete, an officer for our FFA, and I have over 800 volunteer hours accumulated. 2 days a week, I get here between 7 and 7:30 a.m. as a highly active member of our chapter. I participate in employment skills so I can be more prepared to graduate Mount Baker next year. I raise market hogs, and by the time I graduate, I'm projected to earn more than $10,000 across the 5 years I've been showing. With those profits, I'm able to reinvest into the livestock industry as well as my future, because I, as a high school student, can figure out how to budget, reinvest, and save better than some adults in this room. I do all of this while keeping a 3.925 GPA in the classroom. My goal is to attend Washington State University to pursue an elementary education degree to become a teacher, but it is extremely difficult to carry out those aspirations seeing the blaze in which our leadership is leaving this district and fearing that this too will be my future. In a recent notice of retirement sent out to families, our school leadership boasted about making smart financial decisions in her personal life to be able to retire 3 years early, when I don't have a doubt in my mind she is one of few responsible for the financial state our district faces today. Yet at the end of the boast, we see the same message: go Baker. Seeing these budget cuts as a student is a completely unique perspective that I think needs to be shared. My first round of memorable budget cuts came in the final weeks of my freshman year. I came to school every day not realizing the teacher who helped me get through a sexual assault at the hands of a different teacher, which was extremely mishandled by this district, was having her job pulled out from underneath her. As I left her 5th period geometry class on the last day, I walked out crying because I was leaving my only stability in a classroom that I had since 4th grade behind. The very next year, I saw the same pain of that math teacher in the eyes of my mom, who was in her 3rd year as a secretary at Kendall. I saw the stress in her eyes as secretary jobs were slowly picked round by round after scanning a QR code, no different than a fantasy sports draft. These are families you are affecting. This is families' health insurance, mortgage payments, and so much more. As a student, I walk into class to receive an education from teachers who are in a near constant pressure cooker of stress. But we as students have made the choice to show up. Teachers, custodians, secretaries, and para-educators have all chosen to show up. Yet I feel like I don't have a school board who chooses to show up for me. I have yet to see any of you in my classes this year to experience the unmanageable overflow of students in history and math classes, and kids sitting at TV trays and foldable chairs in a Spanish classroom because the student-to-teacher ratio is reaching unsafe levels due to lack of teachers. Last year's state testing revealed our school scored below 30% in the math portion of the test. Some may question why this is, but maybe I can give you an idea. Maybe it's because we have 3 teachers responsible for teaching an entire high school 3 to 4 types of math. Maybe it's because the district scheduled this unnecessary testing after being warned by our high school's math department that we as students have not been taught the material being tested. Maybe it's because our math teachers told us, quote, "You haven't been taught the material, so you're just gonna have to try your best." Maybe it's because class sizes are so large that we as students don't feel we matter, but are rather a box to check. I will end by saying this: why should I show up every day? Why should I play sports with Baker's name on my jersey? Why should my future children become 5th generation Mount Baker students? This is my 3rd time talking in front of the board, and I want to know how many more times I have to attend these meetings to see change. I ask that you take into consideration the fact that we as students read every wave this board makes, no matter how big or small. We have to be better so that 17-year-olds like myself aren't speaking in front of a bunch of adults who can't get their act together, but are rather spending our final moments as kids being kids. Coming from someone who genuinely means it, go Baker. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that's not signed up that would like to speak?
I am signed up, or did I sign up?
You don't have to sign up if you're, any other comments? Okay, thank you. So next up is,
Yeah.
what's that?
Yeah, Holly would like to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Did I sign on the wrong thing?
You don't have to, yeah,
Okay,
I
sorry.
take the people who've signed up first, but then you're more than welcome.
I'm speaking about something totally different, kind of switching topics here. I just wanted to say that we had, it's more of a good of the order. We had 4 teachers initially certified as National Board Certified Teachers. The news came out last weekend. And those teachers are Leslie Chawla and Kirshman Desai and Ginny Sullivan and Havel Rand, who was ripped last year, but has accepted a job down in Renton as a choir teacher. So, and I realized that I hadn't been in front of a lot of you talking about National Board Certification and the support that the district gives to that process through a facilitation cohort, and we have done that for about 15 years. And I don't need to, you guys can read, I don't need to go through this whole thing, but just a few highlights. Mount Baker is one of 10 districts in the nation that has 30% National Board Certified Teachers and have been recognized for that. I think for me, National Board Certification was the hardest thing that I've ever done. And it made me a better teacher, and before the research sort of confirmed that going through the process makes you a better teacher. And it's the benefit of that magnifies throughout, the further I get from my initial certification, the more I can see how it's impacted my teaching. And so, again, the details are sort of in here. The other thing that National Board Certification does for our teachers, we have 3 of the 4 what National Board, or what OSPI calls challenging schools in Whatcom County or in the Mount Baker School District. And we have to meet a certain poverty threshold for that. And the state provides an additional stipend to National Board Certified teachers that are working in those schools. So it's a way for our teachers to be able to spend the arc of their career, really an entire career in the Mount Baker School District, drive to Kendall Elementary School when they live in Bellingham and drive past the school where they can make $10,000 more a year, probably ride their bike to school. It keeps us in the game. So I think the district support for this program for the last 15 years has just been, it's paid off. It's pretty clear. And we have 4 new teachers that are joining us, so. Just in your packet really quick is just kind of a little bit of history and why National Board, and then the national sort of the 30%, and then just a little bit more about the research behind the impact of National Board certification. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go on to information from board, and I'll start with you, Danielle. You're not ready?
Oh,
Not
sorry, I was.
Pull the old switcheroo on you. Mix it up.
Wait, say that again, I'm sorry, I was writing. down the notes.
Information from board members.
Oh, about just what we've
Just,
been up to.
yeah.
Since our last meeting, I was at WASDA conference, which is a gathering of all of our fellow board members from around the state, and it was my first time going, and got to network with some folks and learn a lot about some of the issues that we're facing and how other districts are handling it, and have been taking copious notes and looking at different strategies to try to help tap into that wider network of folks so that the people in this room aren't the only ones having to think on and kind of stand on other people's shoulders and the good work that other folks have done in other districts to try to help us out. So I guess that was a really inspiring conference for me, and I learned a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, so along those same lines, we went to the conference, and I had some thoughts about things that I wanted to learn going into the conference. One of the things I was thinking about prior to the conference, I think the comment that Danielle made after the last board meeting about the strategic plan. And I honestly had never looked much at our strategic plan. And I looked at it. I thought, wow, this is a great plan. It actually deals with a lot of the challenges that we're working on, but we're not really following the plan very well. And one of the seminars that we attended there had to do with how to get that plan integrated into the school district. And there were some good ideas there. It was given by the superintendent of Sumner School District, who also happened to be voted the superintendent of the year. Kind of anecdotal, but worth something. Big, I think over 10,000 students there and growing down in Tacoma. And so what they do is they plan their school board meetings a year in advance, and then each meeting they focus on one aspect of that strategic plan. And then they have school visits to follow up on that, where they're looking at an aspect of that. So I kind of like that because I'm not a very creative person, and I felt like that was an out-of-the-box solution for how to properly integrate that. And I know we're just trying to keep our head above water right now with all the challenges that we're dealing with, but I'm hoping that we can plan to look into that and work on that in the future to get that integrated, because it's a very good plan. I also had an idea, and I may regret this, but I was thinking about just trying to, when people come up and speak, to to let them know that we've listened is to try and repeat back what I heard without commenting on it, but at least so that people know that we're listening and paying attention. So we have some concerns around the financial work group that the elementary staff was not represented well in that, and worried that that's going to leave out the elementary staff in the budget development process, which is upcoming. We have concerns about a lack of sense of urgency and understanding regarding the timeline for getting the levy approved, and the lack of enthusiasm from our community in getting that levy approved. I will say I'm happy that the one person who showed up was in the for committee, not the against committee. That's good. And we've got concerns from students about leadership, about future, and even going into teaching because of the stress they see for people they know and trust. And just to make sure I didn't miss anything here. And finally, we had some good news about the National Board certification and how well Mount Baker is doing in that and attracting teachers to our community, and it's not costing us money to do that. So that's pretty cool. So that's what I got. Thank you.
Brenda?
Yeah, so I was at the conference as well. It was great to be together. We missed you. I was really hoping you could be there to get to know you a little better, but it was nice to spend time with these guys and learning a lot. We definitely sought out things that would be really important to us, and it seems that a lot of other people were looking for the same thing. You know, that was pretty focused of a lot of people were looking for the answers that we're looking for. So it's nice to not feel alone, but it also sucks that we aren't alone. So, or that we're even in it anyway. So I was excited to see about the roots of empathy. I actually got to meet a baby from Acme from the last night, and he is a peach and a very sweet little baby. So that and the mother let me know that she's really enjoying the group, and they're getting a lot out of it too. And I had never met him before in my life, and he went right into my arms and was cuddling me, and babies don't do that. So I mean, not me. I mean, most babies like me, I guess, but it was just that I had never met him before. So so that is that's all I got.
So Jason, welcome here to our school board, and this is a new opportunity for you, but it's information from board members, and obviously you've been a board member for a fairly short time right now.
Yeah,
but
a few minutes.
yeah.
Anyway, I'm Jason Bloodgood for everybody. I didn't get to go to the conference. It was a last minute thing I found out about. Danielle brought me back some good information to read up on. Been doing a lot of research personally to wrap my head around everything, to know what's going on and what we can do and what we need to do moving forward. So don't really have much this time, but definitely learning and figuring out what we have to do to move forward with this stuff, and was able to listen to all three. I wasn't a board member yet, so I was able to go to all three schools and did that, learned a lot, heard a lot, and look forward to moving forward to solve this stuff. So.
Well, thank you. So I had a few things I wanted to point out. First of all, I passed around a Washington State School Directors Association legislative priorities for this upcoming legislative session, and the process that WASDA uses to come up with priorities. We meet the legislative representatives meet annually. We vote on positions, and then amongst all the positions that WASDA has approved over the years, we then we communicate back our top 10 priorities, and then they take that list statewide and use it to develop the top priorities for the year for the legislature. And they just happen to dovetail really well with Mount Baker's needs. So I wanted to point these out. First is providing ample, equitable, and stable public education funding, continuing to implement the prototypical school funding model, and transition to kindergarten, and various other things that will improve our bottom line. Advanced special education, which they did last year. They increased funding for special education, but we're still a long ways from fully funding education. Special education. We're required to provide special education, but we're not. We fund about a third of our special education costs locally, even though the state requires us to provide that full education. So we're short about $700,000 a year in special ed funding compared to what we have to spend on it. So that's one thing we'll keep working on. Safe and healthy schools, construction. That's actually one I've been working on quite a bit. Transport and feed students. So those are all. Those were the main items for and this is the upcoming legislative session is the second year of the biennium. So it's not a major policy session. It's a 60-day session. We don't expect big changes in the second of a legislative session of the biennium, but we're focused in on these things. And if we get any funding on the three AMPLID, everything but the safe and healthy schools will go directly into our operating budget, which is very important for building our budget. On the back, you can see I wrote this is what I'm sending to our local legislators to kind of go along with WASDA's priorities to emphasize that the need or the importance of that locally. And so if I provided this in case you want to write or contact your local legislators so that we're speaking off the same page. I think reinforcing that same message and of the highest priorities is the way to actually get them to listen. So that's why I provide this. And if you want any further information, you want to contact your legislators, just have a discussion. Let me know, because I'd be happy to help out with that. I attended all of the community listening sessions. I really appreciated that. I think it was good to hear from folks throughout the community, and I think it provided some really valuable input for the board, for the district, and I really appreciative to all the people that came out. I think it was pretty well attended, most of the meetings, and it was very useful. Was the annual conference. I'm not going to repeat everything, but I will say that some of us attended a session with Chris Rectal, our state superintendent of public instruction. In the middle of the session, he said, there's 3 districts with binding conditions. 2 of them will be fine. And so I went up to him right afterwards. I said, Chris, I've got 3 daughters, and if I say I like 2 of them, then they're wondering, is it me? And so he said, it's not Mount. He said Mount Baker will be fine. And so he was referring to Marysville having lost the double levy, which is that's a situation that is you can never make up from. So, but that was interesting to hear that comment from him. Let's see, financial fact finding work group meetings. I think that the group is really off to a great start. I think Nick has done a good job helping keeping us organized, and we're moving. Let's see, we have that. We'll cover that a little later, I think, here on the under report. So I won't go into it any further now. Had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with TJ Kelly, the Chief Financial Officer for the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, on our quarterly binding conditions meeting. And that went very well, and I think Brian's back here. I won't steal your thunder either, Brian. So I'll let you report on that one. I was tempted to, but I won't. And then I'm serving on the Washington State Carbon and Forest Management Work Group, which seems like, okay, what's the value of that? It was established by the legislature to look at issues surrounding forest management, forest revenue, and carbon sequestration, because there's been a call from some quarters to shift some of our state forest management of state managed land that provides a significant amount of school revenue to a carbon sequestration contract model, which my concern is a reduction in revenue and with that model. And so I was able to get myself appointed to the work group to make sure that voice is heard. So I'm the only one representing the beneficiaries of DNR managed lands. There's only 12 members statewide, and it was established like that. And we've had our first meeting, and I can see that voice is really valuable in that process. And so keep reminding people that the DNR that the state was given the lands to specifically pay for schools. And so that's what we have to remember. And then along the same line, I was also appointed to the Whatcom County Forest Resilience Task Force, which is looking at some of those same issues, but just in Whatcom County. And so there again, speaking up for the interests of the beneficiaries of state forest revenue, which are the school children of the state. So in this case, Whatcom County, and we've already seen that the Whatcom County Council has asked for a pause, which I'd mentioned before, on our local timbers, on some of our local timber sales, which has reduced our current revenue by over $600,000. So there is an impact of some of the actions that are taken by other entities of government, and if we're not there representing ourselves and making that evident, I don't think our interests would be paid attention to. So that's what I've been doing with that. I think that's all I had. Action items. Next is, let me see if I got the right page here. Mount Baker Resolution 232413, resolution to request an apportionment advance. Nick, did you want to speak to that one first, or Brian?
I think that would be a Brian one.
Sure. Sorry, I didn't know. So, you approved this resolution previously, and the way that the RCW was written is that OSBI can front us the amount of either 10% of apportionment or the lower
the lowest our fund balance goes. So we asked for 10% of apportionment, and they wanted to revise that and get the lowest amount for the month, right? So in the month of June, we're scheduled to go negative. The amount that's shown in there, I think it's 1,080. So that's the amount that they have provided to us in advance, and they just want the updated resolution to provide to the state with that actual number on it.
So any questions? So Jason, for your information, this is OSBI, this is out of our basic ed apportionment, which we get on a per student basis. And so in essence, the OSBI is willing to pay ahead just so that we are able to make our cash flow work. We won't get any more or any less total revenue. It's just a timing on when it appears. So if not, I'll entertain a motion on Mount Baker Resolution 23-24-13.
Motion to approve resolution 23-24-13.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that passes. Next is Mount Baker Resolution 23-24-14, resolution to authorize and sale of certain real estate property owned by the district and no longer required for school purposes. Nick?
Yeah. So if you recall, the school board passed a resolution about this back in October. So going through the process, we've been in advisement with legal counsel about the best way to move forward with this. That resolution back in October declared that property we own, commonly referred to as the Hopewell Grange, no longer served a school use and was going to be listed for sale. A part of that process then was advertisement of that notion of sale in media, so Bellingham Herald. You all held a public comment in which a couple of people did share some input and had some clarifying questions about the sale of the Grange. And now would be the final resolution where you make the determination that in consideration of that public comment, to still proceed forward with the sale if you so choose.
So any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
My question is, we have an expectation on the sales process and when we would get the money and how that would impact our finances?
Yeah, that's a good question. So with this, assuming this will pass tonight, I'll be in touch with the attorney tomorrow on the legal steps to procure a real estate agent. I've done so privately, but I haven't done so within a school district before, so it's new territory for all of us. The state law requires that we cannot accept anything less than 90% of what we've had the property appraised for. And then once the sale goes through, assuming it goes through successfully, it would be the same turnaround time as a private sale would be as far as us receiving the funds. There are only two accounts that the funds can go into, and it's the debt service fund and the capital projects fund. It cannot go directly into the general fund. Yeah.
What were the two again? Capital projects?
Or debt service fund.
Debt service.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, I think the capital projects is good because that is a fund that we're potentially going to borrow against, so we don't have to take out a loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be good.
And I'd just like to comment on some of the comments or concerns that were raised in the open comment period about this issue, right? I mean, it's a piece of real estate. And I think there were concerns that, it can't be easily replaced. And then in board discussion and in our reflection on it, I'd had that same concern initially myself. And yet the placement of the Hopewell Grange right on the far boundary of our district is not in a good location for future use. And then the ill state of repair of the building itself is a potential liability to the district that we have to keep maintaining this empty, aging, very aged building. Those are two factors that definitely weighed in on my mind. The location really would be more beneficial to the Nooksack School District than Mount Baker School District. And then the liability of the building itself, we discussed, could it be moved? The building cannot be moved given its 100-year-old plus age. And so just wanted to be transparent about some of those factors that weighed in on my decision.
Any other comments? You know, for me, and I've looked at it quite a bit, and it's primarily the location. It's not in a location that we would conceivably use for a school facility. Even if we had some sort of facility there, it would be out of the way for administering that. And it seems like the value of the property would be better used in our capital projects fund than sitting unused in that particular location. If it were in a more central location, I'd certainly want to hold on to it, but it's not in a place for that. So entertain a motion on Mount Baker Resolution 23-24-14.
Motion to approve resolution 23-24-14.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up is the Acme Portable Site Prep Bid Proposal.
Yeah, so Acme had a failing portable that was removed from their property because it was no longer could be safely used. That space, the space is still needed. So even though the portable is gone, there's still a need within that building to hold some itinerant staff and hold some small groups of students in that space. We currently own the portable that is going there. It was purchased, sorry, I can't recall exactly when it was purchased, but it was purchased some time ago. And it's been in holding in a storage location as we progress through the bid process, or sorry, not the bid process, through the planning and permit process with the county. So we've made it through that process, we're good to go. Now it's just a matter of getting it trucked up here and placed at Acme's property so it can be used. And this is the final step to make sure it's ready to go. Tom went through the bid process, got a couple bids, and submitted the most reasonable one here. So, yeah.
How much are we paying per month right now for storage?
Tammy, do you happen to know that?
For what?
The storage for the portable, do you know how much we're paying per month?
I don't.
Sorry, I don't have that figure exactly.
I guess my only concern is that one of the solutions that we're looking towards to not having to take a short-term loan is borrowing against our capital projects. And I think what we've been counting on so far is using almost that full amount. So if we spend this money, that now gets deducted from what we could potentially not have to borrow. So we might as well look at this money as borrowed money.
Well, and I should clarify that in Brian's calculations, that was in consideration of this project.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian, do you want to address that question?
Sure, and we'll talk about this more in my formal report later. But there were some expenses that I talked with Tom about. We talked about how much it cost to store it, the useful, what kids could get use out of it. And the cost is ongoing anyway, that we just need to, if we finish, then we're done. When I do my calculations for the possibility of a capital projects loan, I do take that money out, but we don't get quite up to where we need to be. And
how far short are we?
It depends if we can use timber funds or not. But even if we don't do this, we still don't get there.
So it affects how much we would potentially have to borrow.
Nick, can you speak to some of the uses for this portable?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, this is a portable that is used by some of our itinerant staff, might be an SLP, might be an OT-PT, that needs perhaps a little more space or a little more private space, which for those of you that have been to Acme know that that is very hard to come by. So they've been functioning and operating without this for a while now since the dilapidated one was removed. And in speaking, we've checked in with Erica Rasmussen, the principal there, throughout this process. And she is well aware of our financial situation, and she has reiterated to us the important need for this at Acme.
So if the portable that was removed, is there something wrong with its site, like its foundation and all, whatever's being, like what's being prepped for this one that isn't available from the old one?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I would have to defer to Tom on that one to answer the specifics, but I guess I would check with Tom on that one. I can check with Tom.
On a site tour, if he gave us that on that, I can.
Okay.
So
I know also.
the permit process, they were say because of the floodplain that it's in, you can no longer put a foundation, or you cannot use the same foundation that was currently being used. So we have to upgrade to meet code.
And the foundation that was there was actually there as a temporary, on a temporary basis permit. That's what the building was there for also, was a temporary building.
Another point is we're in the, we've gone through the permit process. There's time limits on when you have to complete your work under that same permit without getting another permit, going through a whole set of rules. So we're kind of caught which is bound to happen when you're doing a lot of capital projects. And we're shifting temporarily the direction to be able to have that as a source of a loan. But this project just happened to be caught in the middle, and I think in my estimation, I think we should finish it off, and then we'll still have the remainder of that fund for temporary cash flow purposes. So we will be continuing to work on the cash flow issues, but I think at this point that it's a project that we should finish off, because we've got so much into it already that and both for the permit part, but also the program part. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion again on resolution, or no, Acme, this is the Acme portable site prep bid proposal.
Motion to approve the Acme portable site prep bid proposal.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. We have, next up we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 policies. Start with Mount Baker policy 4060, distribution of information. And Nick, did you want to address each one of these policies?
No, I was just gonna share in a general sense. And Jason, I can give you kind of some background. Traditionally where policies will come from will be those that are written by WASDA and provided to us for formal adoption. The benefit of that is we know that it has been crafted and reviewed by legal counsel, and they know it's the best operating policies for a school district. It also creates pretty common uniformity in policy and procedure around the state. So the way the policy works, we get recommended language from WASDA, which is exactly what you'll see in board docs. You'll see some red line stuff and some new insertions of blue underlines. Those are the suggested changes. And when they come from WASDA, especially on things like the ones we have tonight, traditionally they're accepted at first reading if that's what the board so feels. And then it is the role of the superintendent to develop the procedure attached to the policy. So the board adopts the policy, the superintendent will develop and carry out and enforce the procedure connected to that policy if one is connected.
So, and I will, to follow up on that, I will say that in looking over these particular policies, it was my opinion that these are in general minor changes we'll take them one by one, but the civility in the workplace is, the wording I think is all changed, but the WASDA policy mirrors the policy that we already had in place for civility in the workplace. So it's not a change, it won't be really a significant change in policy itself. So if there's, as Nick was saying, when we have minor changes in policies to conform with the law, we do generally approve those first and final reading. But it's if you have any concerns having read through it, we can enter a policy for first reading and cover it later. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So any comments on policy 4060, distribution of information?
I don't really have any comments specifically about this one, but it just reminded me that at one point we had discussed when we have these policy updates to find out if they're required or recommended. And that is something that I'm hoping that we can get. I don't think it's really relevant to this one because it's, like you said, it's minor, but I was hoping that we could get that.
I didn't check on these ones on that. Tammy, do you have that? Because it's,
Yeah,
they
so if you
usually, WASDA does say that with the policy changes.
So if you look at the bottom, it'll say classification. That's WASDA's classification.
I don't see that, at least on the
Oh, which one are you looking at?
4060.
first, 4060 is the first one.
4060, it says classification is discretionary.
Oh, that's not on here.
Yeah, it skipped that line for some
Oh,
reason on
sorry.
ours.
Yeah. I don't know why it didn't come through because it's on my.
So yeah, some will be required, discretionary, or recommended.
What's classification priority? 'Cause that's on the next one.
Well, we're not there.
Okay, all right.
Let's deal with this one first.
With that?
So we're not to the next one yet.
Yeah,
We'll deal
we'll deal with this one first. So
So I can
basically,
tell
what
you that the
distribution.
The procedure at least is listed as priority. The procedure attached to policy 4060 is identified as priority.
Okay, well then what is priority?
All right.
Priority is you better get at it.
Thanks, Rick.
So what
It's discretionary.
so the purpose of policy 4060 is to deal primarily with materials that are from the outside, like a youth sports group that then would be distributed through school or posters or whatever that are distributed through the school. So it authorizes, and then the procedures will have the procedures for the principal dealing with that. So there would be then a process for the principal to either approve or not allow distribution of information of that nature.
I can tell you as a former principal, I would qualify 4060 as essential.
Why is that?
Because we get a lot of requests to hang things and distribute things in our schools, which is great. You know, our school is a great conduit of information, but we just need to have some kind of policy or procedure to adhere to. Otherwise, it would be quite willy-nilly, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's also necessary that the district be able to control that the information that's posted in the schools. It's that it gives it places that authority and the responsibility on the principal.
Because you could have interest groups that want to post inappropriate for age materials.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So any other questions?
About this particular policy?
Yeah, so we're doing one by one. So it's,
Okay.
just 4060. And if there's no other questions and it is acceptable, I would entertain a motion for first and final reading for policy 4060.
Motion to approve Mount Baker policy 4060, first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Next is Mount Baker policy 5001, hiring of retired school employees.
I noticed the only change was sort of the time frame from a year to a month.
Mm-hmm.
I was curious about that change in the language, if you had any context about that.
I'm not sure. When WASDA sends us, do they share notes or is it just their?
No.
Okay.
It would be in their updated legal.
So all four of these came from Wausau at the same time?
There's many. You have to
Yeah, we're
just
not
scratch
done
the
yet.
surface.
We're chipping away here, Ed.
We took 4
There's-
off to
it's got-
make tonight go a little bit.
Yeah, there were originally
We had
8,
8.
Oh, wow.
and that's not the exhaustive list. So we're just chipping away.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we'll start all over again next year.
Right.
So.
And I can share with you the pamphlet that they sent out, their legal
Oh, yeah.
policy
Okay.
things.
Some good reading?
Yeah, I'll share it with you.
Just as a general comment on WASDA's work on policy development, each school district is required to pay dues to WASDA by state law. The policy development alone, if we had to hire a lawyer to study all these items, we wouldn't have any money left. And so just by having one statewide organization developing policy, we have uniform policy at a very low cost. Right, and that's beneficial. And then we have in the past have actually you can pay a little extra and have WASDA review all of your policies. We did that probably 12 or 15 years ago, where we went through all of our policies and they gave us updated language on and we started from scratch then. And I think we've been able to more or less keep it up since then, but that got us kind of to the modern era on policy. Any other comments or questions on 5001? So as Daniel was pointing out, so it's relatively minor change. If not, I'll recommend, all right, I'll call for a motion to approve policy 5001 for first and final reading.
Motion to approve policy 5001, first and final reading.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Policy 5161, civility in the workplace.
This is another one, the classification is on there for this one. It's classified as regulation, which again, not sure exactly what that classification refers to. But I can tell you, again, in my time here, this is a policy that I have used as both a building principal and now in human resources. It's helpful in those roles to have strong language to guide your work rather than trying to guess in it. So I think adopting these updates from WASDA is appreciated, certainly.
And I think I did point out already that this policy is new language from WASDA, but it mirrors we had been ahead of our game in this policy. We had put together our own, and so this is catches us up to WASDA's language on civility in the workplace.
Just point out that, it's really about conflict resolution. That's the way that I see this, how that gets handled, and it's getting to be even more and more important. And seem to be losing those skills, so I'm hoping that I mean, I haven't read this thoroughly, but I hope it's a good policy. I think it's really important.
Any other questions or comments?
I did have a comment.
Yeah.
I think it's really important when we think about a civility policy in an academic setting to balance. One of the things that was struck out from the previous version, the free exchange of ideas and that idea of academic freedom for our teachers. And when you're talking civility policy, sometimes it's really important to be mindful of balancing those two things. And I read this pretty carefully, and I wondered if our staff and unions have looked at this updated policy and had thoughts about it, because clearly a civility policy has implications, disciplinary implications for our personnel. That while we're getting great support from WASDA in the language and the types of things that we need, policies should also work locally for us. And so I guess that was my question. I imagine that this just came straight from WASDA, and maybe folks haven't had a chance to look at that, but that would have an impact on our staff.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm looking for.
I found free, it's in the very first paragraph.
The free exchange of ideas.
And then the free, again, on, under item 1, about halfway down the first page.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I didn't catch that.
So
I would
I guess
agree
what,
free
with that,
exchange
with
is
that
important.
concern, I think what I would recommend that we accept the policy for first reading and then give the administration an opportunity to look into that and then get back to us at our next meeting.
I would appreciate
I
that.
think
particularly
that's our
that-
normal procedure whenever we have any questions on a policy that are not, that will hold off. So if there's no objection to that, I will accept it we can accept it with first reading without a vote, so.
I would appreciate that, and especially feedback on, does this do enough to protect academic freedom? Because
So is that
civility-
clear, Nick, what
Yep.
the questions are?
Yeah, and sorry, the reason I'm looking at some other language, because, and this is, I mean, I can come back, I can engage more formally with the teachers union, but they're heavily protected in their collective bargaining agreement in that area, which collective bargaining agreement would, we'll have to see how those things,
Yeah, we wouldn't want a policy that's in
Yeah.
direct conflict.
Right,
Either,
yeah.
or creates ambiguity there.
So, yeah, if you can come back next meeting and
Sure.
if you have the opportunity to complete that,
You bet.
Thank you.
great. Last policy here is Mount Baker Policy 6111, tuition. Any background on that one?
No, a couple slight changes. You can tell it, it's, if we're running programs outside of the 180 days or for students beyond 21 years old, it's a way for us to cover some of our operational costs. But
It
it's,
doesn't kick in very often, but
right,
it's
it's not the most common here, but, we have offered summer school in the past.
Right.
And we have not collected tuition. This would allow us to if we so chose.
Any questions or comments?
No.
If not, I will entertain a motion to approve Mount Baker Policy 6111 tuition.
Motion to approve Mount Baker Policy 6111, first and final reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our last action item is next steps for hiring an interim superintendent. And to kind of set the stage for our discussion, I think, so the board at our last meeting established a timeline that we would address the issue of interim superintendent and including whether we would be seeking an internal candidate, external candidate, and then what would be our next steps in the process. And so, so I think I wanted to start this out as a discussion, so we get, and then we can clarify the next steps in a motion form. But I think I would like to start it out with a discussion of the issue first. So I would specifically, the first question before we go into the next steps after would depend on what we decide, whether we want to look for an internal or external candidate or candidates for interim superintendent. So I wanted to give you a chance to discuss, weigh in on that question first. So I'll just go around the room, but if you'd like to start, then
I think a lot of the feedback that we've heard from our staff and our community is call for outside consulting or a fresh set of eyes to help us in our moving forward. And so that weighs on my mind as we're thinking about this, is remembering those voices asking for that sort of new perspective to catch things that maybe we aren't seeing.
I had a lot of time to think about this, which is nice when you're trying to make a challenging decision, to have some time to sleep on things and reflect on it. And my decision would be to hire external candidate. It was a tough decision. I think we have some really good internal candidates and that have a bright future here. But when I have to make a tough decision between two choices and they could either both be right or both be wrong, I think in terms of if they're both wrong, what choice would I live with better? And for me, if both choices were wrong, I would feel better about having picked an external candidate, knowing that it was feeling like we were being proactive and more proactive in finding a solution. So that's just my thinking process, how I went about that.
Brenda?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both you guys. It does seem that most of the feedback we were getting was that we need a change and a direction forward. So I think looking externally is going to be beneficial at this time. But I'd really like to have sort of a path forward. Like, I don't think that, well, because maybe it's an interim. I would assume this is not a permanent, what we're looking for. So I'd like a clear path with where we're going next. But yeah, I think that bringing somebody in to kind of right the ship is going to be helpful.
Jason?
I could agree with everybody. I'd say external would be good because we would get, intern would be someone that's done the field before and they got a really good chance. We can get someone in here that's seen something to make changes or seen things that worked and didn't work. So I feel that's a good route to take at this point.
Thank you. So for myself, I've been through this process before. In 2011, we had a superintendent resign mid-year, and we had to deal with leadership transition kind of like that. And in that case, we ended up, we had Jerry Jenkins, who was ESD superintendent, as acting superintendent for probably a couple of months, I think, a short period of time, just basically signing the bills, but also writing. He also did a pretty thorough examination of leadership needs for the school district, which the ESD does not provide that service anymore. But he did a very, I felt very thorough. I have a copy with me. I searched for that in my old emails and found, oh, this really still makes sense to me. And one of the things he recommended for us as a transition was an external superintendent, interim superintendent, and we hired Kars Brandsma at that time, and what he was able to do was to take. Our leaders was basically in disarray at that time, and he was able to bring things together, get us on a solid financial pathway, and create the conditions where Charlie Burley was able to move into the superintendent position and have a very successful pathway to we worked our way into a very strong financial condition over a period of several years. And I think that that model really worked well for us. And I think there's a lot of similarities with our current situation. And I think it's, if we have an interim for a relatively short period of time, we can, it also, I should say, back up a little bit. I'm looking at the leadership needs that we have over the next few years, getting us back to a stable financial condition. Most of the big decisions that have to be made for those next few years are in the next 6 months. This is our greatest leadership need right at this point, because we have the levy coming up. We need that confidence that we're headed in the right direction. We have bargaining coming up for both unions, and that's given that over 80% of our operating costs are salaries and benefits. That's going to have to come into play somewhere in the solution to the problem to our financial problem. And I think there's also from a leadership standpoint, there's a need to move to, and the board has expressed this a number of times, to a more collaborative model district-wide. And I think getting started on that with a new leadership will give the rest of the district admin really kind of a breath of fresh air and get us headed in that direction, get the model going. And then I think we've got a lot of possibility. We've got a lot of strength here if we head that direction. So I feel that my only concern is it will cost us some. I think we could ideally use at least somewhat part-time interim superintendent. If you have someone who's highly experienced and they have part of the core part of the portfolio, the rest of the leadership team works together and figures. I mean, it's not the board figuring out who does what, but as a team working out how the whole team takes care of these major needs at this point. And so that's kind of where I'm coming from in wanting to have, at least for a short time, an external interim superintendent. Because I think it will, the value to the district will far outweigh the cost. And at least, and I agree with Ed, if we're wrong, at least we chose that pathway that I think we felt strongly that has the greatest chance for success. So maybe what we should do is break this down into components, since we do have to decide on internal versus external first before we can chart what the next course will be. So if this sounds good to you, maybe I would entertain a motion as to whether we should pursue an internal or external interim superintendent.
Make a motion to approve an external candidate for interim superintendent.
Yeah, if you want to make a motion to that effect.
I just did.
You did.
Okay, if that's the motion, fine.
I second.
It's not in Elizabethan English, but.
We have a second. We have a
Second, okay, thank you, Jason. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So next would be I think next we should look at a timeline for leadership transition. I know, Brenna, I've talked with you a bit about that, and I would like you to get a chance to talk with the rest of the board on some of your thoughts on what might be a feasible timeline for.
Yeah, well, that was one of the things that we attended at the conference. Issaquah District went through a huge superintendent search, and it was all very much based on like community feedback and stakeholders and everything. So that was probably not the only, but the one breakout session that I got the most out of and got the most, I was excited about it. So, if we're gonna go with an interim for a time, I do wanna have a plan to get this permanent position. So we talked a little bit about, the interim starting in January, and then in spring, planning starting the process of planning leading into fall of 2024 to start the process. And then with a superintendent search for permanent position starting early 2025, like the posting and then going through all of that stuff. So I kind of wanted to start a little sooner, but I think that, in the discussion that we had, I can see the benefits of not rushing into it and taking this time to go through this process. And that feels pretty good to me. I'd like to be a part of that. And I think that I could probably recruit Danielle as a cohort with that process, because I think we both really were impressed by what Issaquah did. So I'd like to do that. Sure.
Yeah.
Other thoughts on Danielle?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'd love to comment on that. The stuff that Issaquah did was so cool. Like first soliciting from the community what kind of qualities they want in a superintendent, so that then the board can funnel that in to the job description and use that to help build interview questions, and then kicking back out to the community actual video interviews and letting the community weigh in on that and give feedback on all of those candidates to help the board make the decision. I mean, there are just so many really cool things that they did to make it help inform the board of what our whole community wants for that next person, but it takes time.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I learned from that session too, is that you can't hire a superintendent any time of year and expect to have the best candidates available. You have to do it during the window when folks are shopping. And one of the things that we learned from folks at WASDA is that, you know, putting your name in the hat to apply for a superintendent position when you already have a job is a really risky thing to do, because you're putting your current employer on notice that you want to leave. And so we want to be, I think, as attractive of a place as we can be. I mean, that's what some of these folks were talking about. When I went out and was looking for a superintendent job, they are shopping us as much as we are shopping them.
Yeah.
And so I think having a period of an interim to help get our financial situation on the right track is going to make us a more appealing place for the strongest candidates. And so I think that timeline of, okay, we've got an interim, maybe for the rest of this year, and into next year, as we kick off a pretty robust search process, that would be very involved and participatory, is my hope.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
So if I'm understanding correctly, if we wanted to have a superintendent for this upcoming school year, that job would need to be posted in February, but we would have had to done a whole bunch of work prior to that to get the community involvement and the other things needed to happen
Right.
to be successful there.
Yeah.
So because we can't start this February, we're going to start the following February for the following school year.
Well, we'd really be starting this spring, planning our
not
timeline.
starting. We're
And
gonna
then
post
in
it
the
following
fall,
February. Yeah.
doing that beginning,
Yeah.
collecting from our community and then posting late fall, early winter to attract a good candidate.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also feel strongly that in order to have the best candidate pool, we have to get past some of our current challenges so we can see a better direction that we're headed to. I think a lot of potential candidates would look at our current challenges and say, I don't know if I want to risk my career on that. And so, so if we can get past the current hurdles, which I'm hoping to do with the interim, then we will be, we hope to be the kind of district that will be attractive. I mean, that's our goal. And like I said, I've been through this process a few times before, and I've seen it work both ways. I think when we hired Charlie, he was an internal superintendent. He was already working with the district. He had finished his superintendent credentials, but he was a first-time superintendent. But Karst had basically had set the tone and gotten the ship righted, and that created the conditions for success. When we hired Mary, Charlie had announced to us basically almost a year in advance that he was going to resign as superintendent, which gave us that long planning period to we could do a lot of our prep work in the fall, do the job posting, community process early in the year, so that then we were on the earlier side of the hiring cycle rather than towards the end after potential candidates had already taken the job. So I think there's timing wise great benefits in that too. So yeah, I would support that that time frame, that timeline. Jason?
I agree. I think we don't want to jump into this because we're already in a bad spot. So we want to take our time and get a good game plan as a group with community members' involvement 100% on this one. So we get what we need.
I don't, so as far as the timeline, I think it's, I think a sense of the board is what we are, what I would see is what we need at this point, because I don't see that we would put that in a resolution form, but we could if we wanted to, but.
Well, I think we need the first thing, what we have to do is figure out who we're appointing as an interim for January.
Yeah.
So what's the next step for that?
So, yeah, so on that, because we had a short time frame to work with here in terms of our leadership transition, and it's actually happened faster than I thought it would. Mary's final day of work is I think the 18th of December. So I felt that we needed to explore a parallel process and so that we would be ready to make the decision between internal and external. So we could at least figure out, well, what would be our possibilities with both, with both of those options. So I reached out to Mark Venn, who was our previous search consultant when we last did a superintendent search, Leadership Northwest. Mark knows our district very well. He was our assistant superintendent and later and went from Mount Baker to superintendent of Cedar Woolley School District. And after he's retired, he's been a partner in Leadership Northwest. And so I asked Mark, what if what would be the process for looking for an external candidate for us, and what it might cost, and what the time frame would be. And right away he said, if you would like, I'll do it for free. I said, well, that price is pretty good. And he was willing to do that, both because we had hired him before, plus he would hope that we could hire him again, but there's absolutely no promises, and he knows that. But it was just he has contacts with the various the retired superintendents, the various potential candidates, and so he said he would do that, and he reached out to 8 different potential candidates and had a conversation with 8 retired superintendents in Western Washington, and came up with a recommendation that we consider hiring Phil Brock, that we consider interviewing Phil Brockman, who's the retired superintendent from Cedar Woolley School District, as if we were to decide to seek an external candidate, which we made that determination. So, and I've provided Phil's resume to you. I've worked with him in the past on the revenue issues and other issues that that Mount Baker and Cedar Woolley have worked together with. But I think he worked about 30 years for Seattle School District in a number of capacities before he became superintendent of Cedar Woolley School District. Has a thorough understanding of the major items that are the major leadership needs that we have in the next 6 months. So I have had a conversation with Phil, and he's willing to talk with us, interview, and he also expressed that if we wanted him to work part-time rather than full-time, he'd be open to that, and focus on just those parts of the job that he would be most valuable for. So that's what that's the information I would bring back to the board.
Do you mind just a clarifying question? So you said it was is it Mark Venn?
Venn, yeah.
Mark Venn, he recommended retired superintendents?
Well, I had that discussion with him when I first talked with him was, so, and I think we both agreed that you're not gonna hire a currently working superintendent mid-year. They have a contract at the end of the year. And they couldn't leave. And if they did, we wouldn't want somebody who would leave just like that. So, and we also needed the experience. And so it's both who would be available and who would be capable of that.
But then also somebody as an interim position who isn't necessarily looking.
What's that?
If it's an interim position, it's also not somebody who's necessarily looking to stay long-term.
No, and this would not be the case. He wouldn't apply for a long-term. He's retired, and there's a reason why people retire. He's not, he's at the beginning of his retirement, and so he's more than willing to continue working, but he's not looking for a permanent superintendent position. But he would be able to provide the type of leadership needs that we have. So that's, and actually, when Mark got back to me, I was actually, I was very pleased that he was able to find that, because I wasn't certain that we would be able to find someone that would fit the bill. So. But any other thoughts, questions on?
No.
Next steps, I guess.
So the next steps would be if we and I think it'd be worthwhile to interview Phil and see if he would if he would fit our needs. I think that's to me that would be the next logical step, and I'd like to do that quite soon, because I think we need to be ready to have I would like to have the interim in place as soon as possible. January would be great. We don't have that much time for all the things that we have to all of our leadership needs for the rest of this school year. And so I would suggest propose that we would hold a public, hold a board interview in, open public session. And then give at least, some time, whether it's, 3 or 4 days or whatever, for those that, for the staff and public to get back to us before we reconvene. So it would take 2 special meetings to do that. We'd have to have a special meeting for the interview, and we'd have to have a special meeting to reconvene and make a determination whether he would be a good fit or not.
Well, it doesn't give us a lot of time between now and January. That would be one next week.
Well, we got the Christmas
One
break.
during break.
Hmm?
It would be one next week. I don't think we're gonna do 2 in 1 week. It'd be one next week, and then one the following week, which is the week of Christmas.
Yeah, so if we could either have an interview next week and wait till the 1st of January, if that makes sense to you.
Are there limitations on recording that meeting with him?
Oh, we can,
Because then people can watch it
yeah,
at times that work for them, because I'm just mindful, like, if we want to give people the opportunity to give feedback, but our staff and teachers are on holiday.
right.
Well, it would be a public meeting, so it could be recorded and
Yeah.
then we could come back in the beginning of January.
I don't know, I would rather, it would be nice if we knew we had some real resolution before.
So you do wanna do it the week of Christmas?
I'm
Okay.
So
thinking.
looking at the calendar, what days,
Since you're
I
getting
didn't.
conflicting,
Sorry.
Just a quick heads up, the
reports
week of
here.
Christmas, from an operations standpoint, you'll have district office support because we're not open that week.
You're not here.
I'm not here.
Exactly.
We won't have,
I
there's
would be
that.
willing to do 2 next week if it meant that we could have.
Oh, no.
So what days are you
It's
working
always
next
time
week,
for
Tammy?
feedback, though.
Tammy, are you gone all week?
Next week I'm here 3 days. And
So
then after
till-
that, I'm
through
off
Wednesday.
until- Yeah, I'm here through Wednesday.
So we could hold the interview on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yeah. That would
And
work.
then
It's
that would,
sounding like the second meeting needs to wait until
till
the
January.
first week of January.
Yeah, and we don't even come back till Wednesday.
Okay.
So,
But can't we have the meeting anywhere we want?
I guess if we,
Not if you want.
well, I want to, yeah, okay. I want to make sure that staff and community members have the chance to,
Right. That would be the input section.
yeah.
yeah, but 2 days for an input section, that doesn't seem.
Well, that would be one day if Tammy's gone
It's your
Wednesday.
reaction. I
Huh?
don't know, it's your reaction. I don't know, a lot of people are gonna do a lot of in-depth
Well, what if
analysis.
they don't, what if they're busy at work? What if they're at a Seahawks game on a Wednesday? And they can't see it until they get back
Ouch.
to Thursday. So what about that?
And I have to post any special meetings you have, so I have to have some turnaround time.
Right.
So they have to be posted in the Bellinger Herald.
So, yeah, if we met Tuesday, that would give us enough time to post. We have to give 24 hours notice.
So I know I'm not supposed to talk, but I'm, just for clarification, are we just interviewing this one person? That's my confusion right now. I don't know how this works. I'm just curious if it's just, we're focusing on this one person.
We're
That's
not
my
hiring
question.
anyone, we're appointing someone and we're going off a recommendation that we were given by a person who is, their job is to search for people. He talked to 8 folks, gave us a recommendation that this is the person that would be a good potential fit for your district. And so now we are going to talk to that person.
And did you all reach out to him or just Russ, I guess was my confusion?
Just Russ, this is the meeting for this would be when we're meeting this person.
So, yeah, and if it weren't for Christmas break, I would agree with you. Ed.
Yeah,
But
okay.
I think given the logistics of it, I think we should wait until at what would be the earliest in January that would make sense for you, Tammy?
I mean, we're back, school reconvenes on the 3rd of January, so we could even do that Thursday, the 4th, if you'd like,
Okay.
or we could do the 3rd. I just
Yeah.
need to be able to post it. So you tell me what you.
Is next Tuesday okay for all of us? They say 6 p.m.
The 19th?
How's that work? Does that work for you, Tammy? Could you start earlier, Jason? 5?
Yeah, I can do 5.
What about you, Daniel?
I can make 5 work. Yep. What are we gonna ask this guy?
Yeah.
That's the next question.
Well, I'm gonna suggest that you get questions to me and throw that out also to staff unions if anyone wants to get questions to me, and then we can look at those questions at the beginning of our meeting and determine which, kind of winnow them down to our core questions. Because we're not gonna, process-wise, time-wise, we don't have a, we're not gonna go through a couple months to figure out our questions.
No.
But I think if we do have some, if we look them up and Tammy probably knows where they are, questions we've asked for superintendents previously. And if you can get those to me too, that would be very helpful.
So Tuesday, the 19th at 5 PM.
That's what I have.
As I'm thinking about sending questions to Russ, I'm just sort of curious, can we just bounce off each other, like the core kinds of things that we
Well,
think
yeah, let's discuss that
a
now.
person needs?
Yeah.
So that then as I'm thinking of my questions, I can be, right, like what are our pressing leadership needs in the next 6 months?
Well, I mean, define 3 of them, right? Budget development, potential bargaining, and a levy.
And Russ, you also talked about the collaboration, and we've been hearing a lot
Right.
about transparency, right? We need somebody who can do those things. Okay,
So budget development, collaboration, bargaining.
I see the collaboration as integrated into those
yeah, but I'm
things,
thinking about
especially the
like,
budget development.
I'm thinking about, when you're asking someone questions and trying to get an idea if they're a good fit. I want to be able to tell that that's a value for them.
Well, I would ask that person to explain to me, I would say, for example, what does the budget development process look like to you?
Yeah.
And then, have them walk you through it and describe it.
I think it's helpful for us to just identify the values and things that we're looking for before we talk with the person
Sure.
instead of after.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. What have you done to successfully get, or seen levies get passed? What is that process? What's a successful bargaining process? Like, these are kind of open-ended questions, but way for somebody to kind of walk you through their experience and give an idea of what that looks like.
Yeah. I guess I'm just gonna say this. We have a need for trust in the community and with the staff. And we need somebody that we feel like we can trust this person to lead us and that we want to follow them. So I'm just putting that on my list.
Right.
I think there's a real need for that.
Yeah, another thing I had considered is I feel like we need to, the work that Jerry Jenkins did for us in 2011 of analyzing our district leadership needs. I would hope that could be part of the interim's work too, because it's so integral to how they work with those needs, is understanding those and then being able to articulate those to the board and the public. Will help us as we move forward into the next transition of leadership.
I would also ask an interim why they think they're qualified to get us out of the hole, so to speak, right? Because it's one thing to come in and lead a group that's doing well, and it's another thing to have to change direction. Coming in a tough spot, right?
So on those major, budget development, collaboration, bargaining, levy, basically those questions are, give us your background and experience on and how you would deal with each of these major areas.
This person isn't gonna have a lot of time with us. So we need somebody who is efficient and a good planner and can keep track of a lot of detail and focus, right? I mean, some people are better at the long game and building over time.
Yeah.
And that may be who we need 5 years from now, or when we're doing our permanent search. But if we're looking at an interim position, it's a slightly different skill set, isn't it? I'm sort of thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'd also encourage anybody in the audience or anybody who wants, email me. Send me your thoughts.
And also get them to me, because I will be collecting the
CC
questions.
Russ.
You keep saying the levy stuff and you're talking about January. You're again making me extremely nervous. You cannot talk about levy stuff in January. We cannot wait. I don't know if you're getting how close we are.
Yeah, we have the public comment period, so, I thank you though. Other major areas for questions that you,
So we're getting our thoughts about questions to you by,
well, what I'm thinking process wise is that we would have those together prior to December 19th, so I could have those written out so that we can then just say at the beginning of the meeting, say, let's ask these here's the 15 we're gonna.
15 is a lot. How much time?
Well, I'm just throwing out a number, don't.
Well, I was gonna
If
say,
it's
we
5,
talked
I
for
don't
an
know
hour,
how
maybe
many,
10.
Tammy's gonna have,
Maybe-
get the
You want them
maybe
by
10.
the
list of what
17th?
we, huh?
Do you want them by the 17th, by Sunday?
Sure, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Tell them we'll have a multiple choice quiz on our strategic plan. Want to make sure he knows that.
Okay, so we'll get the questions to you by the 17th. We have that meeting on the 19th, and then we're gonna leave that, put out some feelers, get some information, feedback from people, and then have a January 4th meeting at 6 PM, 5 PM?
6 PM is fine
Okay,
for that.
January 4th, 6
Is that,
PM.
because I think I wanted to have the 5 PM to give us a longer time for that interview process.
Okay.
But the 6th will, by then, we should either know yes or no by then, I would think.
Okay. That work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there anything else that we need to do to submit this tonight, or just get the dates in order and then we can move on now?
Well, so I think we should consider the timing on more contract detail discussion and, or just exploration. Because, and it may be that if we have our interview the 19th, we can determine at that point whether we want to explore some,
Right, because we can
yeah,
get like Buzz involved in that, is that?
right,
Yeah.
and
and
maybe,
that can probably happen
maybe
even over
appoint a
the
couple
break.
board members and get that.
Yeah.
That part.
Buzz is our lawyer.
Hmm?
Buzz is our lawyer. I've given Jason some context.
So 12-19, and then expectations of the contract.
Mhm.
Okay. And 2 board members. Probably you and, did you say you wanted to do it?
I'll volunteer.
Okay. Okay, are we good?
I think so, we still have a long way.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're okay there. So next up is a report, Director of Finance.
Good evening. Thanks for having me again. So we did not have a formal financial report last month as there was no second meeting. You guys were at your conference. So for tonight, we'll go through some figures for both October and November. I was able to get November prepared just today. So the budget status reports that you are normally furnished in advance have been given to you now through board docs. So you have them. I apologize. But I got the report from the treasurer on Tuesday. So that was as fast as I could get those ready. So we can start in and just look at, first talk about some future planning. Since last we had a formal report, I told you I was working on what the actual fund balance would be, the ending fund balance for the 22-23 school year. When we were projecting in May, the projected ending fund balance was just over $1 million. And when we looked at all available resources that we had in that year and how to get as many of them to us as possible, our actual ending fund balance as reported on the F-196 is that $1.6 million number. So that changes where we start, which also changes where we end. So we can go to the next slide and see that.
Oh, is it so much higher? It's great news.
Yeah, so
Very good.
thank you. In the year-end process, just very thoroughly going through everything that we had there, looking at categorical programs, anything that was in capital funds that could be a shift in that. Yeah, just, and it's what's real, right? So when Steve was doing the budget, he rightly was fairly conservative, right? So he wasn't telling us, oh, you're gonna be fine, and then we weren't, right? So it did make some changes for this year. For example, we spent more out of ESSER 3 than we budgeted for. So when we look at, actual numbers now for the budget, we were budgeted to have about 400,000 in ESSER, and it looks like we have about 240,000 in ESSER. So there are considerations to this year from that number and last year as well. Yep. So with that, I got together with Lisa Matthews, who is the CFO at the ESD, the Chief Financial Officer at the Education Service District down in Anacortes. And she helped me do what she called a budget scrub, others call it like a mini budget. And we essentially took what we had so far in the year and then predicted more actual accurate numbers with those than we were able to have in May. So with the new beginning fund balance and the more accurate numbers based on the real things at that time in November, the ending fund balance has shifted to just under $1 million there. You see that 941,000. Now that changes all the time, right? Which is why there's a timestamp on there. It's estimated in November. If I were to do those same calculations today, they would change because there's been leaves, there's been resignations. There've been a few hires, even though we have a hiring freeze in place. There were some hires determined for student safety. I think tonight's meeting has implications on what that number will be. So it's shifting and we will keep a close eye on that, but that's an estimate in November. And as you can see there, it could mean a smaller reduction overall. When we're talking about that initial, we're talking about 1 year, $2.68 million. That could mean a smaller reduction overall.
That's estimated as of July 31st, 2024.
Yes, the ending fund balance is on August 31st.
August 31st,
Yes, is the end.
2024, that is the estimate.
Mhm. So with future planning and consideration, we did have our meeting with OSPI, the quarterly meeting with TJ Kelly and his team and Lisa Matthews and her team at the ESD. We talked to them about our progress so far. They are getting all the reports that I furnished to you as well, so they're keeping a close eye on our progress. And they really were very optimistic, right? The comment that Chris Rakedahl made to Russ about, we're going to make it through was echoed there. And actually, I had a chance to talk to Chris Rakedahl 2 days ago, maybe it was yesterday, and he mentioned the same thing, right? We had a rough patch, but he's fairly optimistic that we're going to get through. They looked at the fact that we already have, some fact finding going on, so we're working on a budget already, that we have not hired some what we would consider key positions, just under consideration of the financial impact there. They approved our apportionment advance, which they thought was a good move because that gives us some time. We'll talk more about that later with some figures, but they're optimistic. And with that optimism, they agreed to issue us a new binding conditions letter. So we don't have the letter yet. I want to say that clearly. They've verbally agreed to issue a new letter, but the new letter would have a reduced ending fund balance target for the 24-25 school year. So the first, I think we go to the next slide. The first letter asked for $2.68 million in reductions in year one. And that was to get us to our 5% fund balance policy. So if you look at what we talked about in the conversation we had, was setting either a dollar amount target that's below the 5% target or using a number more like 2%. So this is again all just possibility, right? But if we look at what would it be to make it to 2%, that would mean getting up to just over $600,000, and in year one, more like $1.5 million in reduction. So the impact on our system in year one specifically changes, but then being able to draw that into year two, we would continue to reduce. We still have to get to 5% eventually, but the things that the ways that we save in year one double up in year two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So we have more time to meet that goal, and ideally it lessens the impact on our system. Again, I'll say again, it's still important to get to 5%, right? We still have to get there eventually. This does not, solve the problem and say, oh, we're making, these less reductions. We're not, and we don't have the letter, so we don't know what they're going to say. They could say 3%, so that could be $1.7 million, right? There's still some considerations there, but it's overall really good news. They expect to get that letter to us before the new legislative session starts. So early January, we will have that by the latest, and we'll be able to see what that means and really begin budgeting in earnest to meet that goal, which
Year one is the 24-25 school year?
Correct. So we need to prepare a budget in the 23-24 school year, this one,
Right.
to meet that end goal at the end of the 24-25 school year.
Okay.
The other thing they still haven't figured out, and we were talking about in the meeting, they kind of talked through it a little bit, but didn't decide, is if they set a reduced target and say, target is 2%, and we meet that target, do we remain in binding conditions? At that point, we've met the conditions they set. We're not making our own policy, but the board can waive that, and we have an ending fund balance that's positive. So they may choose to keep us in binding conditions and continue the oversight and support, or they may say, we're going to let you out of the oversight I believe they will still give us the support because they really do want us to be successful, and then we'll continue through out of binding conditions. So that has also yet to be determined. But those details will be in the new letter. When we get the new letter, it will be furnished to the board and posted on the website so the public has it and can see it as well.
So the 610,000 is a positive fund balance that we would be required to have at the end of the 24-25 school year, which is August 31st.
That's just an example of what it might be.
I know, I'm just
We'll have
trying
to
to
wait for the
understand.
letter to actually get the
Right.
number, the actual number
I want
itself.
to make sure, because when we talk about reductions versus
Mhm.
actual values, that can get a little confusing. So I want
Yes.
to make sure I understood those
Yes.
numbers.
So the current letter, the current binding conditions we're under say we have to get over $1.5 million in the positive because that's our 5% fund balance
5%,
policy,
right.
5% of expenditures. So that's the way they set their binding conditions. And now they're saying, because of the progress you've made, we could reduce that and set a new target for the 24-25 school year.
The biggest impact of this, of having this extra time is reducing the number of RIFs that we'll have to do because any money we save in the first year of those 2 years gets, as Brian was saying, adds to the second year. Instead of riffing twice as many people for 1 year, you're half as many. And any other savings we can make, aside from employment, also reduce the number of riffs so that it gives us a much greater opportunity to stick with our educational program than we would have had with having to make all of that cut in 1 year. So the fact that it's taking more time is actually a good thing because it allows us to make that transition more smoothly so there'll be less impact in the classroom. Even though it's taking more time, it's going to keep that classroom experience. It's still, it's still challenging.
Correct.
But it's not as challenging, and it's starting to make a bit more sense. It doesn't make it easy. I think we'd be wrong to think that it's going to make it easy, but it certainly makes it a lot more feasible.
And I appreciate the perspective, yes. We are still making significant reductions.
Mm.
Okay, yep. I think we can, are there any more questions before we move on? I don't want to move on too quickly from that because I know that does have big implications. Okay. So more procedurally, these are the cash balances in the budget status reports that you receive. Those are the fund balances, which are skewed by encumbered amounts that are set aside for inventory or due to other funds. So these are our cash balances. These are the ones that have been reported historically here. So they're still being reported now as of October 31st. And I should say that both our budget status reports and the cash balances are posted in the website in the finance section as well for the public to see. We can go to the next slide, which shows the November cash balances. So these are our most current. They match the county treasurer's report that we received on Tuesday. And from there, we can generate those budget status reports to show us the expenditures and revenues. There's our enrollment following a predictable pattern. I would note, though, that our apportionment was updated by OSPI. Usually in January, they go in and they true up the apportionment to the actual student count. So we are receiving now currently apportionment for our current FTE. Because when they were in there doing the apportionment advantage, they just decided, hey, we're in here, we're working with it, let's just do it once so we can move on.
Mhm.
So we are budgeted for that number of 1536, but we're currently receiving funding for a number much closer to the 1515.
This is a factor in the discussion about I see the benefit of having a lower fund balance, but at the same time, we might have a moving target if our enrollment continues to decline. So.
Correct.
That's a concern.
And when we budget, you know, we talked about there was a reduction of 3% year over year, and this year it was 6%. So we had budgeted with what's called a cohort model, where you just assume 100 kindergartners and roll everybody up, and the seniors go out. And I think a mix of, you know, moving that cohort, but then also reducing by a percentage would be wise when we prepare our budget. And that's something that the budget committee, when we convene, will discuss. Yeah.
I will say, Ed, when we had a fund balance above 5%, I think that my recommendation at that time was to as accurately predict our student enrollment for the next year, and then subtract 50 students. So, or between 30 and 50, depending on the numbers. And what that did was if we were hit with something, we would be very, very unlikely to go below that projected. Ever since our fund balance has been at, or in this case, below our required 5%, I've been willing to go along with, okay, we'll make the accurate projection and call that good. I haven't pushed for that more conservative since then, just because
I think
it's just been too hard to
once
make
we get our head out of the water.
Huh? I still like my
I
hope.
don't think 5% is enough. I mean, it's
Right.
not a month. 1 divided by 12 is 8.3%. So if you want at least a month, you need 8.3%.
Well, and I think, Brian, you've mentioned, 9% would be a healthier. But we're talking about working very hard for the next couple of years to get up to 5%. So I think we need to look beyond that. I agree. What is our sustainable level? But I think we have to keep that first goal in mind before we can set another target. I sunk my boat in the middle of Baker Lake once, and I swam to the next feather, not to the shore. Because I could see a feather 20 feet away, so I swam to that one. Because if I looked at the shore, it was too far to swim. It was a mile in November, so that's a long ways to swim.
Now you're telling tall tale, swimming a mile in November.
But I'm still here because I went feather to feather. And that's what we have to do with this.
There's our revenue as percent of total. I heard the ask to turn the numbers on the far left column into actuals and not percentages. I haven't figured out how to do it yet, but the actuals are reported down below. Just over 9 million collected, over 32 projected revenue. Same with expenditures. And you see that overall expenditures are lower than our revenue so far. And that's largely because of some of the special revenue we've received, including we added a transfer from capital projects to general fund that was a direct transfer, not a loan, and we received our apportionment advance. So we currently have quite a bit of extra revenue, which you'll see on the next slide as well.
I like this new graph here.
Okay, thank you. I will keep populating it as the year goes on, so we can track those things. So that's a year-to-year revenue comparison, and you can see in blue last year and orange this year, and our revenue this year is significantly higher than last year. And again, that's due to those, two special revenue sources. And I call them special revenue sources. They are both legal and typical. The capital projects fund, the general fund transfer has been done here every year for a long time, except for last year. And the apportionment advance has been a law for a long time, but nobody at our ESD or OSPI has ever gone through one. But it's there and legal, so it is a legal special revenue source that we will pay back in May, and you'll see that in the next few slides. So if we go on to our monthly revenue and expenditure. you'll see some of that special revenue come through in October. And November is a month where we receive tax collections, but also apportionment gets reduced. So we only get about 5% of our normal apportionment. So the fact that we have, more normal revenue stream in November is due to that apportionment advance. And all of these slides are available on the finance the finance page of the website and available to you in board docs.
I just had one question for Russ. Hopefully it's not too far off topic. What are the chances that we can get the timber revenue that's has withheld sales in the next 2 years?
Yeah, and so that is an appropriate question. We had asked and spoken directly with the council about that issue, and they stated, I think the majority of the council stated that they were not going to request a pause or a extension to the pause in the current in those 3 timber sales of about $600,000 after December 31st. Now, I've been in communications with DNR administration and other folks trying to figure out what that might look at and like, but I think at this point it's still up in the air which, if any, I think at least one of those sales will continue to be paused, but maybe we don't know if the other 2 would be.
They're voted on individually?
So there's 2 processes going. So the county council is requesting the DNR to pause the sales. The county council has no authority to pause the sales. The DNR chooses to forward or not forward the sales to the Board of Natural Resources. The Board of Natural Resources chooses to vote to offer the sales for bid or not. That's their choice. But usually, once the DNR forwards the sales as a request for bids to the Board of Natural Resources, they almost always approve of it. So it's mostly an internal DNR process. And what they're determining now is they have some the state legislature provided revenue for setting aside some stands for carbon sequestration, those types of things. And which of the various potential stands will actually go into that program is still up in the air. And personally, I'm hoping that they won't be the Mount Baker ones, but we don't have a control over that either. So we won't find out until next year, and it's possible that the process will extend longer than they initially thought. So that's kind of a long way of saying it's still up in the air. But I've certainly had conversations trying to encourage the movement ahead for the sales. But
you said our county council does not have authority to. They vote on it, but it's more of a.
Yeah, the management of DNR trust lands they're managed by the DNR under the governance of the Board of Natural Resources. So the county can ask, the DNR they asked for a pause, the DNR said, okay, we'll pause. But the DNR could have said, you can ask all you want, and we're just gonna do it. So it's an internal process. And the question now is just which areas they're gonna concentrate on. And that has it's partially political, partially the location in relation to other significant wildlife areas, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into that mix.
For your reference, the initial budget had $250,000 of state timber revenue coming in. And when I was looking through it with Lisa and Lori at the ESD, they recommended I lower that amount to 50. So for the figures I provided earlier, that's at collecting $50,000 in timber revenue instead of the budgeted number. So anything above that would just be good news for us.
So I should mention one other thing, because these are 3 timbers, so it takes quite a while to put together a timber sale. It doesn't, it can take years sometimes. But they always have some new sales in the process. And what they've done before, when they've had to stop some of the sales temporarily on the older timber, is shift over to some younger timber, which is less controversial. So that may, that may happen down the road a bit, but it's, the other factor is we're in the final part of this decade's sustainable harvest, and the first 5 years in Whatcom County were overcut, and so this 5 years it has to be undercut to make that balance over 10 years. So we're dealing with that too. You can ask after the meeting, but it's not a public process. But.
So the next key question, switching tracks here, switching gears, is how are we going to pay for our planned and necessary expenses for this current school year? You all know that we're predicted to run a deficit and we need to find a way through. So if we look at before the apportionment advance, after we get the new year-end number and did some transfers from capital projects, we were scheduled to go negative in February. So we go to the next slide with the apportionment advance that you approved and then adjusted today. We're now looking at June. May gets close and June takes a significant dip. You see the number of 1.38 million there. And ending at that same number you saw earlier in the slides, 914,000. Again, an estimate that is changing, not quite as well as you speak, not as I speak. So that's the estimate. If we go to the next one, this shows if we were able to borrow out of capital projects, and it takes into account the projects that are ongoing and the expenses that are incurred with that. You'll see that the June dip gets down to just over 300,000, and we end with a negative 93,000. So I've reached back out to the county treasurer. This is very different than the first figures that we asked for, which was a multi-year loan of $1 million or more. Now we're looking at, can you float us through June and, into the next school year less than $100,000. So the outlying factor here as well is that there is still in debt service some timber revenue that's been there for long enough that I believe we could legally move it out. When I did that math today, and I didn't include it in the slide because I'm still not sure that it's legal, but that was about $211,000. So that gets us to about 100,000 in June and ending with a positive fund balance, but still owing ourselves the money from capital projects back. So it doesn't solve the problem, right? This is why this is a separate track from what we were talking about before. This is just how we're getting through this year. But with the legal and allowable things that we could do, this is what I can confirm so far. If we take a capital projects loan and potentially we could get a lot closer than this and have a much better financial outlook.
Brian, remind me when we would have to pay back the capital projects.
For the next slide. So we can loan ourselves money from capital projects for 364 days. It's a very common thing. When I asked about it, when they asked about the apportionment advance, everybody said, let me get back to you, we gotta do some research. I asked about this and they said, oh yeah, no problem, we can do that, we'll get you a sample resolution. It buys us time, but so there's some of the conditions that must be met, are that we must be paid back within 1 year, and interest will be applied and the rate for that interest will be fixed by the county treasurer. So we'll work with them to do that. You'll approve a resolution, and immediately after that resolution is approved, we can go and move that money. But we should push it as late as possible. So when we're getting into April and May and looking and seeing where we might potentially go negative, we would, if that's on the check run on May 15th, we're gonna run a negative balance, and on May 14th, we'd apply that loan because that gives us to May 13th next year to continue. I should also note that the numbers you saw in the previous slide were based on a levy collection that was exactly the same as our fall levy collection. Historically, the spring levy collection has been a little bit higher, so there's potential to borrow a little bit more from that. That said, to your question, when do you have to repay it? We could work with the treasurer to take our loan this year on May 14th, pay it back next year on May 13th, and take another on May 14th.
Mhm. Yeah, so, and the other thing I would remind the board is the interest will be paid to ourselves.
Correct.
So that it comes out of the operating budget. So it does reduce the operating budget. It goes into the capital fund. And then, as you say,
We can borrow against it
we
next
could
time.
borrow against that increased amount in the capital fund. You know, in past years, it wouldn't have made any difference. Now it's 7%, so interest, it's.
And that's,
a
you
good add.
So we don't get to decide the interest rate.
the county treasurer will set the rate. It's a, just for our own, I mean, yeah, we wouldn't want to set our own rate. We want somebody else to do that for a conflict of interest purpose. So that's something we can consider, to not have to look for such a large loan from the treasurer or from the outside. We don't need to do it now. The apportionment advance that you all approved has bought us some time. And I have also reached out to Zion Bank Corp, which holds our limited general obligation through the capital projects levy, to see if we could refinance our loan with them, which is set to end in December of 2025. So there's a possibility that instead of getting a loan from the county treasurer or looking for a different loan, we simply refinance that one. They didn't say no. In fact, when I was talking to Trevor Carlson afterwards, he said they didn't say no, but they didn't know that schools were in so much trouble. So they determined, Zion Bank Corp determined they had to go back and look through their whole investment portfolio because they might be at risk. But they didn't say no, right? So we have a couple of options when we're thinking about that key question, how are we going to get through the year? You know, those are a couple of options that we can have.
With current interest rates, it should be nice to not
Correct.
have to do that.
Correct. But if we're looking for a lender and we can't find one otherwise, then that's an avenue I've discussed that with them. Because I don't want to wait until the end and not have a plan. So I think the next slide is just more questions, if you have more questions. I don't have more information for you tonight.
So in terms of the 365, if we approve a resolution, the 364 days for the capital projects loan, those days only kick in when we actually borrow it, when we actually transfer the fund, not when the resolution is passed.
Correct.
And then if the cash flow is such that we can pay it back earlier than that, we just stop our interest payments.
Right, yes.
So we control the period. We're not limited to a set period.
Correct.
We can stop paying or we can pay it all back earlier.
We set the terms of the loan except for the 364 days and the interest rate.
Yeah.
Do we have any range of indication of that interest rate that the county treasurer might set?
I could reach back out to Marysville because they've done that recently.
It'd be nice to kind of know how that compares to private sector loans. I mean, obviously those interest rates are gonna be an important part of the decision.
They shared some information with me, and I believe they're, from the county treasurer, they were looking at a loan of 7 to 8. I would imagine their capital projects loan was similar, but I can't say for sure. I don't know. But their loan in the private sector was closer to 10.
But also, by borrowing the capital projects, we get to keep all the interest.
Correct.
We're paying it back
That's
to
very
ourselves.
different than loaning
Absolutely.
from a bank,
Right.
so.
The
where you just
external
wait to
amount
buy.
that's kind of projected was the 93,000.
Sorry, ask that again.
The amount that we would need to take an external loan for, not from ourselves, but from a bank, was that 93,000, or less than 100,000, I think you mentioned?
Yes, it was close to 100,000. And again, those figures change all the time.
Right.
So we'll be watching that closely and doing more of those mini budgets as we go along, so we can keep an eye on that.
Do we have an idea for the length of that $100,000 loan? Is that like a 1-year thing, or at this point, is that too far out to tell?
So if we are able to move some of the timber revenue out of debt service fund, then we would end with a positive fund balance.
So it'd be less
Not
than a
much,
year.
but positive,
Okay.
yes. But I also haven't projected that into next year as well. There were too many variable factors to do that with these numbers yet. I will in the next one, when I do it next month, project it out a little farther. But I would assume that if we look at next year, there will be several times where we would dip below 0. But again, coming back up, and by the end of next year, we will have a set target that the new binding condition letter will set that we have to get to.
That was the 600,000 or so.
Yes. Yep, but November is always a tight month, just because apportionment is reduced because you get taxes.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Mhm. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you, Brian.
of course.
Thanks, Brian.
So, we're, financial fact-finding work group, and I think, so Ed and I have been, have been part of the financial fact-finding work group, and we wanted to just give a report on our work to date. I feel really positive about the work we've I think been diving right into a number of questions, and Nick has pulled together many of the questions in the form of a frequently asked question list. And do you have, is that in draft form now, or what's the?
I mean, I think we're pretty close to publication at this
Okay.
point. I took some feedback from the group because the intention of the FAQ was to be a public facing document based on the input from the Google document and the community listening sessions. We've used the financial work group as the reviewer. I had one final fix today. Otherwise, it's ready for publication. I mean, as far as public viewing.
So I think the group as a whole decided that there's still some significant areas to pursue in greater detail. I really think that this week have really honed in on what some of those areas should be, and so we'll so I think all the members wanted to continue into January with that work, and so I want to differentiate between the fact-finding work group and a future district budget committee. Two very different things. They'll interface in that the facts that we're working on collecting will be important for the district budget committee to work from. But it's at the district budget committee will make recommendations to the district administrative team, which, the administrative team would be part of that budget committee. But so they'll make recommendations that will go into the budget development, which is a budget development then is a internal process by the finance director and administrative team. And then that will finally result in a recommendation to the school board. So that'll be the process. So I've tried to explain to people that the fact finding is just fact finding. It's not a decision-making body. It's not we're not coming up with recommendations or as far as cut this, not that, those kind of things. And that's not, it's just what it would, I think we'll look at I think some of the next work to do is to look at some of our program by program facts, which we haven't got into that. And I think we'll have to decide which programs make the most sense to be looking at next. But
I think we have number categories for every program, so you would just get the data for that number. You don't have to really, I mean, there's only so many, right? There's only 4 pages worth, you would just get it all. It's, it's on the program somewhere, so. Yeah, should we mention who was on the committee? Do people know?
Yeah.
Do you have that list?
Sure,
Nick?
somewhere.
I can tell you off the top
Right,
of my head. if you
Off
want
the
to.
top of your head?
So it's Nick, Brian, Bridget Rossman, Ian Linterman, Russ, Ed, Todd Matthews, Matt Durand, Holly Kuhn, Aaron DeRocco, Shannon Richardson, and myself.
That's correct.
And the question has come up as far as representation of the various schools, and we the board members, when we in setting up the work group, knew that we needed to have the district admin team on and representation from principals and from the unions, and I think so. And Shannon's the non-represented, I think, and but we let the principals and the unions choose their own members, and their choice, I felt, had more to do with who the unions felt had the expertise rather than a school by school representation, because what we needed was expertise, and because we're not taking information and debating it and deciding whether it fits here or fits there. We're just, it's almost like a one-way street where information comes in and gets deposited there. We're not really sorting through it that much. And so.
Yeah, I think the data is collected. We'll still have to go through a formal budget development process. So I imagine this data will be handed off to our interim superintendent, who will lead the district staff and the next step of the development of the budget. And then that will then be presented to the board. And we're kind of providing a little guidance early, which isn't what we would normally do, but we're responding to community input to help facilitate making sure that no facts are getting swept under the rug or left out. And it also doesn't mean that anyone that has ideas or things or they're concerned that might not get looked at, that they can't reach out and share those. Hey, ask for this, or make sure you look at this, right? Even if they're not part of that, because those are questions that as a board member, I'd be interested in putting forward, making sure that nothing gets left out. I would rather have the same question 3 times than not have that question in there. So.
And I've also let people know that you don't need to be a member of the work group to ask a question or to provide data. And so after the community listening sessions, no one other than members of the work group have actually provided any data. And I've asked people to provide data, but nothing's come in. So I feel a little like I don't know what a person would do sitting on the work group if they're not providing any data. So it's anyway. But I do feel positive about the work that's been done, and I think that we will provide some really good baseline information for budget development process. This is we've never had, in the time I've been on the board, we've never had this kind of process where the board sponsors fact finding. And I normally wouldn't have even suggested it, but with the leadership transition, I felt there was a vacuum that we needed to get this part of the process out of the way time-wise so that we wouldn't find ourselves in the situation we were last year where so many of the budget decisions were crammed right to the end of the year. And this gives us a chance to get some of that real background stuff earlier in the process. And it will then, I think it's probably going to end up working concurrently. We'll probably still be finishing some of the fact finding as the district budget committee gets started with their work, because some of the internal budget development is already going on. So that's, some of these things will be happening concurrently, but I think that the work that we're doing with fact finding is very valuable as it feeds into those other processes.
I'm trying to figure out a way to say it. Because the information is so valuable, and if you had a stakeholder that hadn't been a part of the conversation of the fact-finding group to know what kind of data to even bring, if there were people who wanted to join late to the game, who were appointed through their unions, is that something that the group would be open to? Do you think?
Say it again, data that they
Because-
don't know to look
Well,
for.
okay, I've got a couple different points going on here. To Russ's point that folks aren't funneling data to the group from outside of the group. Sometimes if you're not at the table, hearing the discussions of what kind of data we're looking for, or how to go about it, you might not know what to share or funnel along. And if there are employee groups like our elementary teachers who feel like they would like to have more of a voice in that process, is there a space for them at the table?
Well, they have their union.
But if they
Yeah,
went to
so
their
that's-
union and their
yeah.
union said, we'd like to appoint an additional member,
Well,
does that really throw off our
well,
process?
the union communicates back to their members.
Yeah.
And so their members are made aware of what the progress is through the.
And I have a bi-monthly labor management meeting with the teachers union and a monthly meeting with PSE. The PSE meeting was this week, a request was not made. The meeting with MBEA was held today, a request was not made.
If a request came in at a later date, is that something that would throw off the process of this
Well,
to bring someone in late?
I don't know what they would do.
But if the concern is the data is being missed because of not being represented, and I think that would tell you what data needs to be put forward. That kind of gives you.
What's that, Ed?
If you're saying, we think we're worried that this data is not gonna get put forward because no one else maybe knows this, that kind of tells you that's the data that needs to get put forward.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, anyone who has data that, or information of how we can cut costs, that we've been welcoming that all along.
I think that's missing the point of what the concern has been, but we can chat afterwards. Because you're missing the point of what we are concerned about at an elementary level. It isn't sharing the data, it's, we can talk afterwards. I'm not supposed to talk now, but I'd love to share what the actual concern is because it keeps getting missed.
Okay.
I'm just advocating for seats at the table. And I think it's okay if we've overlooked something, to take a step back and say, oh yeah, let's course correct.
Sure.
I think we should be open to that.
Yeah, I don't want since we established it as a, that the unions would choose their own people, I think that.
He'll be fine.
And actually I did ask, because we had a question from NBA, did we want to add another member? And I didn't have strong feelings, but I asked the rest of the group and they said, no, they didn't think it made sense. So that was.
It's our group, so we can decide. We're leading the group, so we can decide.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm just saying, if people go through their union channel and the union presents to the group saying, hey, you know what, we'd really like to put one more name forward.
Okay.
I think that I'm encouraging us to be open to that in the name of
Sure. Okay, we'll talk after.
collaboration.
Yeah, we can talk about that, you know, and I don't have any personal objections if we go through the union.
I mean, and if it's through the union and a person comes late to the conversation and they don't have anything to add, nothing's lost.
I don't really understand it through the union, because this is a board-led group.
Well, but the parameters that the board
Yeah, but we
put
set the
forward
parameters so that,
was
because
through the union.
we wanted to
Yeah,
respect the union process.
Yeah, we
I-
asked and took point.
I think if the board went picking and choosing one staff member over the other, I wouldn't want to do that. I think we have to because the unions as a whole elect their leadership to represent them. So I think respecting the union process is important for us.
But if a union found that they'd like to revisit their process of how they'd like
Right.
to represent themselves, I think
Right.
that we should be open to that.
Okay.
And so for anyone who has that concern, I would suggest taking it up with your union.
Right.
I would just reiterate the fact that Russ made, as far as, I know, Ed, you said it's yours and Russ's decision. It was more, I said in the meeting on Monday, it was more than a consensus, it was unanimous that we were okay with the way the group was. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind as well, that you'd be making a determination that goes against the members of that group, which would make them feel
Correct,
Like,
uncomfortable.
correct.
Totally understand.
Yeah.
Totally understand. The counter perspective is the people in the room might not realize who's not in the room that should be in the room.
Our next meeting is, our next meeting is next Monday. And so we can bring back that board feedback to the group.
And like I said, my feedback isn't like the board isn't handpicking people, that it needs to be through the union. So if a union decided they wanted to put another name forward.
Okay.
And if they don't.
Okay.
And I know people want to say stuff. So bad.
Anything else to add about the work group you wanted to share?
I was gonna ask you, Ed, if you had other things that you.
I think I said everything. I just, want to establish that it's part of it's leading into the budget development process, so that's important. We said who was in it. And we've agreed to hire an interim superintendent that's going to lead that budget development process. So.
Well, I think one other thing we've looked at some comparisons with other school districts, and we recognize that comparisons can sometimes be apples to oranges. So they give you further questions more than answers sometimes, but those questions are important to help guide your next set of questions. So I think as we've got our neighboring school districts certainly, and within the Northwest ESD, looking at some comparisons with staffing levels, things like that. But with that caveat that you can't replicate each school district. You can't say, oh, they're doing it this way, because there are significant differences between each school. Even though you think they're similar, there are differences. So, but they help us understand how we also look historically at our own staffing levels. But those things help us understand where we are now and how we arrived here. And I think, I will say Nick has done a good job of putting together a format that we can hang all the information on. And Lindy has stepped up to keep track of our minutes and done an excellent job of capturing what the discussion is, so we can carry that forward. So I want to applaud the members. Holly has just worked overtime to bring more questions and more data, an amazing amount of both of those, and with Holly's experience on the State Board of Education, really understanding the prototypical school model better than any of us do. And that's the technical expertise that's really valuable in being able to pinpoint the facts. So I see the group, and I appreciate the concern on the membership, but I see the group as more technical in nature in terms of the kind of information that we're trying to get at, and not debating it or anything of that nature. It's just, what are the facts, ma'am? And then letting that be a body of work that then is available in the budget development process.
Russ, can I clarify one thing? It's not about membership at all. I think it's important. I think people question the timeline of the budget work group and why it's taking longer than we originally expected. And what we are doing is we are starting from zero, and we're creating a foundation that we are hoping can be an annual thing that is used in the future every year moving forward. So while it may be taking us a bit longer this year, it's because we're making sure that we're doing it right and that we are leaving no stone unturned. And I don't want people to see that lengthened timeline as us dragging our feet or taking longer or having no regard for the urgency of the financial situation of the district. I want people to make sure that they understand that the timeline is because of how thorough of a process we are using, and that this is going to be a stepping stone for the finances of the district in the future also.
And as far as meetings, we've been meeting every week. So there's not much time in between the meetings to get we meet, we develop a lot of questions. Nick and Brian primarily have to come up with answers, the data, and fit that in. And there's actually quite a bit of data come in.
And I would, while we're acknowledging people, Christy Ellers at Transportation and Pam Button-Jones in Human Resources have both been fantastic. I've certainly been able to organize the data, but those two have been integral in getting us the data. So I want to make sure they're acknowledged as well.
But the data format that Nick has developed is going to be a tool that will be really great for us to use, in budget development, because you'll have all that data available. You just click on the proper tab, and you can see. You don't have to look for anything. You just it's to really simplify our process going forward. I think to have all of this in one format. So.
And just process too, in terms of the next step, you have all that data, but then you have to contextualize it. Like, what could even be traded for what? What could be, like, that's understanding it, not in a values way, but just how does it literally technically function? And that's the extension of the group. That's the next step is, okay, so technically, what does this mean, right? I think that's and then you have the, you know, you build that understanding as part of it. That's really great.
Yeah, I'm finding things out about how we run the budget. And I've been on board 24 years, and I'm finding new things. So it's just the process of looking helps you understand what we're doing. So, yeah, I'm very pleased, and I think everybody's just, you know, there's none of this, you know, nobody's pointing fingers. Yeah, yeah, okay. But
Brenda has spoken.
it's
Moving
Well,
more
in
than
the
10
interest
words.
of
Moving on.
acknowledging that people are volunteers and we're
Right.
time frame here, we've been here for 5 hours, so.
Okay. So briefly, I wanted the next thing we have is school visits and for board discussion. I talked with the district admin team about school visits. Let's see, was that meeting you were at too? I had so many meetings in the last week that, and I think one of our thoughts for school visits would be to use the school visits to look at each school's school improvement plan, rather than having all of the building principals come here and one after the other present the plan. They would prepare the plan, or they would get the school improvement plan to us in advance so that we could read through the documents. And then when we have a school visit, we would be prepared to have the principal explain to us and us and the board to be able to ask questions about the school improvement plan. So
I guess I'm hoping that the school improvement plan aligns with the strategic plan. Because
Right.
I'm hoping that we're going to get back to integrating the strategic plan into our school visits.
and that's an excellent point, and communicated to the principals group in presenting to them.
It'd be nice if there was some focus. So there's a recurring intervals. By the time we get to the end, we've looked at each aspect of that over whatever interval time we choose.
So I would propose that we try this as a focus for the rest of this school year, and then also incorporate the visits, like, you know, I think I talked to you about transportation maintenance also, which they don't have a school improvement plan, but a visit and help, you know, kind of understand basically at the board level what the issues are. As far as the timing on that, now, Jason, I think you mentioned to me that Fridays are
Yeah, I don't
generally
work
good.
Fridays, so Fridays are good.
How would Fridays be for the rest of you?
Fridays are fine.
Better for me. Yeah.
So I guess if we have that, you know, Fridays generally, if you could work with the principals and try to pull together some potential schedules and then get those back to the board.
Sure.
I'd like to get it going pretty soon in the new year. But I don't know how soon that the principals would, Bridget, could you elaborate on how soon they could get their part done?
They are to turn their SIPs in, their school improvement plans in January 12th.
Okay,
And then we'll review them and work together collaboratively to refine if necessary. So visits, if you want to use those for visits, would be after January 12th.
so late January, say?
Well, the 26th is the no student day and the 9th of February is non-student day as well.
But to Ed's request, I guess the board is asking that school improvement plans try to link to.
They most likely will already, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. We'll
I'd like
ensure
to
those
understand that. maybe.
Yeah, we'll make sure those connections are explicit.
So if you can work together and kind of propose some schedule for that and get back to us, that'd be great. Any other, I don't think, so other meetings scheduled, we have December 19th, 5 p.m., January 4th, 6 p.m., and then we go back to our regular school board meeting the second Thursday.
11th and the 25th
11th,
of January. 111, 125, 28, and 222.
ooh.
Doesn't wear tutus that day. You can wear
So
tutu that
I
day.
Have to
think,
wear a tutu on 222?
Yes, we do.
At least it's not 222, 22.
so I think that's all we have for tonight. Thank you for your
That's it?
patience.
It's been 5 weeks, so.
Well,
that?
Wes could say the same thing over and over again for the next 2 hours.
So Jason, we stick around a little bit to sign.
Are we done?
Yes.
Tomorrow's Friday.